Okay, welcome to the La Plata Electric Association May board meeting. Thank you for everybody who's in attendance. We're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. And as we normally do, let's go ahead and take a moment to please rise and for the Pledge of Allegiance wherever you are. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of
the
United States of America,
to the republic
to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation
under God,
under
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
with
justice.
liberty and
and
justice for all.
Terrific. Thank you for that. So let's go ahead. We're going to need an approval for a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, John. Can we get a second?
Second.
Rachel.
Fuller.
Great. All in favor? Hold your hand up, say aye. All opposed? All abstained? Thank you. All right, motion passes. The agenda is.
Sorry, I was muted. I was trying to get discussion. I don't think you said discussion before you went
Ooh.
through. All in favor? Sorry, because I
sorry.
did want to add something. I'd like to add someplace in here where the for the board to approve the new tri-state rate design committee person. It's currently Jessica, and when we talked to Tri-State, they said, yeah, as long as your board approves it. So we need someplace for the board to approve that.
Let's go ahead, and I think we're going to have a quick conversation about whether or not the board actually needs to approve it, or it can just be an assignment, but let's make room for that on the agenda and then discuss it.
Great,
So,
thank you.
How about a modification for the agenda to include a discussion and possible appointment for the rate committee?
Would it make sense to put that at 4F, sort of at the end of our elections?
I think that's perfect. Good suggestion.
I move to amend as stated for F, tri-state discussion.
Great.
Second accepts the amendment.
Okay, now let's open that baby up for discussion. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if two points. One just came up. We were in the middle of a motion and we were having discussion and another motion came on. So I just want to make sure that's correct, Graham. And then.
So yeah, so I think we can revisit this motion and now sort of have a motion to amend the agenda, and then we would vote to. So we should now be discussing the amended agenda and then ultimately vote on whether or not we want to approve it as amended.
All right. And in that context, I'm wondering why the election isn't the first item on the agenda after member comments. Why is consent agenda there before the election? I thought in the past we always did that at the outset.
I don't have an opinion on it. I think a year ago our consent agendas were zilch, but I think your point still stands. So would you like to amend the agenda and go straight into elections?
Yeah, it's a question, I guess. I think, that would, to do otherwise is to have potentially different officers, including the presiding officer, for part of the agenda. And
Oh, good
seems
point.
like
Okay.
we
Yeah.
should go to the election and then we can continue with the meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. Let's just flip those two items. If somebody wants, you want to make that motion?
So I'll make the motion that two items be, John's made one motion. I guess I'll make.
John has to, no, so John Lee can amend his motion to include your thing, I think, right? And then.
Yes.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, so does it sound like I move to amend the amended agenda to reflect that the consent board items will be after the election. Item 4.
Yes,
Sounds good.
Rachel.
The second still stands for the new amended motion.
Okay. Okay, now we shall have a discussion. Okay. All right, so all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? Okay, the revised agenda passes. Let's, my multi-million-dollar expense report is now not going to be slipped into consent. But let's go ahead and do those elections. All right, so and Graham, you're going to coach me through this here, but so we are going to
Just, did we want to get comments from anyone's here for the public first?
you are correct. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're correct. Thank you. Okay, so okay, this is going to be a tough logistical meeting, but please definitely anybody don't hesitate to speak up as Joe did if I'm doing anything out of order here or not in Rob rules orders. Okay, so let's go ahead and open.
And John, do you want me to do my brief statement beforehand?
Yes, so let's go ahead and open the member comments, and we'll start with the comment from Graham for member comments.
All right, so the La Plata Electric Association Board of Directors encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comment pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing, and formal complaints should be filed according to applicable policy. Comments from the public will be directed at the entire board and not at any individual. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated, and copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Graham. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and open the floor. Do we have any public participation? Okay. There are no comments today, so let's go ahead and move on. Thank you for that. All right, so elections. So we in the past have done elections sequentially. We will do them one at a time. We'll do the president first, the vice president, the secretary, treasurer, and then the representatives, and go from there. So has everybody got let's focus on logistics for a second. Has everybody got their director point voting tool up?
I have director point up, but did I miss where the tool is?
So if you go to the main screen in Director Point and refresh the screen, you should see surveys and votes up in the top left.
You mean before you click on the agenda link itself?
That's correct.
Click home on the upper left.
Yeah, I'm there.
See if I can do a quick.
Drew, maybe can you maybe share your screen? Oh, there you go.
This is what my screen looks like. All right, so come in here, click home.
Yeah, mine doesn't look like that, but you know.
Click control.
On the
click-
iPad, it's called questions,
Yeah.
and it's on the bottom middle on the iPad.
There you go.
Oh,
Thank you, Chris.
there. Thank you. There it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not finding it yet, so just give me a minute.
Yeah, no, let's take the time to get this right. So everybody's teed up. This is how we're going to vote. So if you're not quite ready to vote, then let's get it straightened out. There's no rush here.
I have a question because when I pull mine up, the first thing that shows up is Fast Track Board. It doesn't show as being like president.
Yeah, unfortunately, you'll have to scroll through them. We couldn't figure out what order it was putting.
Okay.
It was not displaying them in the order that we entered them. So
Oh, good
Okay.
point.
Thank you for that.
certainly.
Okay.
Okay, let's give this a go. All right, so
So then how do we scroll through them? Because I can't get off the fast track.
Yeah, it's not real. It doesn't show the scroll bars, but if you just put your finger on the iPad and drag from the bottom up, it should scroll to the next one.
Mine only go 3. Fast Track, Treasurer, and Western United. It does not do all of them.
You know, for me, it didn't do it the first time, Sue, but after I scrolled up and down a few times, I
Okay.
guess it populated, and then I finally got president. For
Okay.
me, the president is the last vote,
okay,
for what that's worth.
try this. Can I drop a chat? Do I? It doesn't look
No,
like it.
we don't have chats here.
So can you see a little hamburger item on the upper right, part of the gray line that says survey and votes? Or you may be able to click on votes. If you go ahead and click on votes itself, it'll bring up a table that just has the votes. And you should be able to step into each one of those.
When I click on that, it says there's an error. But to Kirsten's point, it does appear like more are appearing as I sit here and wait. I'm a little concerned that when I vote, it may not calculate it though, where I'm getting an error message.
Okay.
I guess we can try it and see if indeed after the first vote, we have 12 votes on there.
Yeah, that's what is going to be my suggestion, right? You know, if I'll know at the end of the vote count if we've got all the votes submitted or not. So, and as you might notice, I've come to Drew's workstation. I'll be the only one here who has access to the vote results, but just sort of technologically, it was easier for me to come down the hall than it was for him to sort of transition who was the administrator and back. So I will be running the tallies and everything here in Drew's office. So John, if you don't mind, I'll kind of go over my little script on election procedures.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So as soon as the president opens nominations from the floor, any director can bring forth a nomination. Any director can nominate himself or herself. Nominations do not need a second. A director can be nominated for more than one office, but since we vote one at a time, that would happen sequentially. A director cannot nominate more than one person until everyone has had an opportunity to make a nomination. Directors can vote for themselves, and there's no need to abstain or recuse merely because you're a candidate. The presiding officer continues to preside until the president election is concluded, and then we'll switch. The director can decline a nomination during the nominating process. And if at any time during the nominating process, the director realizes that he or she will be unable to serve if elected, the director should stand and request that their name be removed from nomination. Is considered better etiquette to do it then than waiting until after you're elected. After each nomination, I will repeat the name of the nominations and ask for further nominations. And once there are no more nominations, we will close nominations and proceed to vote. Sort of talk a little bit about how we go through the voting process on director point. Everyone is listed on every ballot. So you'll select the name of the person you wish to see elected and submit the ballot that way. I will do the totaling and I will announce the results. We will not proceed until to the next office until the current office has been elected. For example, if no one receives a majority of votes for president, we'll keep voting until you elect someone, and then we will proceed to vice president. Any other questions on that? No. So, President Witchell, you can open the floor for nominations for president.
Okay, we are opening the floor for nominations for president. Go ahead, Tim.
I'll nominate John Witchell for president.
I will accept that nomination. Thank you.
Any other nominations?
Okay. Okay, so do we need to vote?
I think you're allowed to make a statement if you'd like, or we could proceed directly to vote.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. I actually like this stuff. And so I appreciate your guys' willingness to give me another year knocking around on this stuff. So.
Graham, do we want to just test the system with this vote?
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's a
still
good idea.
having issues scrolling, so I
That-
guess I'd like to make sure that the system is actually going to work.
Yep, I think that's good. So,
Yeah. All right, let's
somebody wants to go ahead and submit their votes.
Down at the bottom of that ballot, there's a little place that you hit to vote to send it.
Yeah, and mine went from having 10 questions to 9 questions, so I'm pretty sure it went.
Okay.
Oh, hang on one second, let me refresh this again. All right. I have 12 votes. So the person receiving I can announce all the votes. The person receiving the majority of the votes is John Witchell. So John Witchell has been elected president. I can announce the total tabulation if anybody wants. Yeah.
Yep, please.
Yes. Okay. So the votes are 11 votes for John Witchell and 1 vote for Kohler McGinnis. So John Witchell is elected 11-1.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to vice president. Go ahead, Tim.
I nominate Tim Wheeler to continue as vice president.
Excellent. Thank you.
I would accept that nomination.
Terrific. Thank you. Any others? Okay. Tim, you want to make a quick statement?
Yeah, thank you for the nomination and for the pleasure of serving as VP the last year. Hope I can do as good a job in the next year. It does feel a bit like a spare tire. You just roll me out when you need me. So I do appreciate that. And yeah, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I thank you.
Terrific. Okay, thanks, Tim. All right, let's go ahead and get your votes in. Okay. Everybody got theirs in?
Seem to be
No,
missing-
mine isn't giving
Yeah, I'm
a
missing one.
vote
Okay.
button. Mine doesn't have a vote button.
We'll try scrolling down.
Yeah,
No luck. Listen, it's 2022. I mean, the internet's just getting started, so I don't know why nobody can seem to write software to allow 12 people to record a vote, but it makes sense. It's so frustrating.
Graham, can Joe text you his vote?
Yes.
Yeah, if anybody wants to just text me directly, my phone number is 970. No, maybe I don't want to sort of like.
Or email. Can you just email me?
Yeah, email would work. Yeah. I'm sort of trying to think of the one problem with it is it'll lose a little bit of the anonymity, but if you're comfortable with emailing it to me, I think that is certainly going to be the most expedient way.
If you can,
John, could you try refreshing
that'll help too.
your board packet? Not packet. There's a wheelie thing up next to the search here on your iPad. Try refreshing that, maybe.
all right.
Yeah.
Graham, did you remember your phone number?
I do.
Doesn't want to give it public.
I don't like
Yeah.
saying it on the public meeting
I
because
sent-
it's my cell phone.
I sent the directors Graham's contact information.
Oh yeah, you got an email from Janelle with my phone number.
So while he's trying to do that, I do have a preloaded vote on my WUE that I can't get rid of, and it's for Kohler. So I think this might be one of the little glitches that's going on.
Okay.
Oh, but now it's gone, finally. Okay.
Okay. Do we have 12 votes, Graham?
Yes, I do now. So the results are that Tim Wheeler is elected vice president, 11-1, 11 votes for Tim Wheeler, 1 vote for Kohler McInnes.
Terrific. Thank you. Congratulations, Tim. Okay, on to the next one. We're going to do secretary next. Let's go ahead, Tim Wheeler.
Yeah, I'd nominate Dan Huntington for secretary.
Dan, would you accept that?
I do accept that.
Excellent.
Appreciate the support and getting used to doing the minutes, helping get the minutes corrected and up to pars and serving on the policy committee. So I will accept that.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah, my vote button disappeared too, so.
Could maybe try scrolling up and down. That seems to sort of refresh it, perhaps in a way that.
What's happening is some of these don't even have a vote button in them. I've got multiple, including secretary again, that doesn't have the vote button. When I go down, the tri-state has a vote button. Roundup 1 has a vote button. Roundup 2 doesn't have a vote button. So.
So let me see something. So can you give me an example, John, of what one of the ones that don't have vote buttons are? Sorry, you're muted.
Board secretary currently doesn't have a vote button. Roundup 2 doesn't have a vote button. Vice president didn't have a vote button. Otherwise, there's vote buttons.
I don't have one on treasurer, tri-state.
I almost wonder if you went back to the home screen and came back to the vote screen, that might refresh it. Unfortunately.
Okay, let me make a suggestion that might help here. So look here. So if the extent that you can directly enter in a specific URL into your browser, if you just, all of this should https://directorpoint.com should all be there. If you just put /, which is the one under the question mark, votes, you may get this. It's the direct list. It seems a little easier to work with. If you want to try that.
Damn it.
Okay. I don't know if that's, let's just take a minute. It's frustrating, but it's important we get it right.
So anyone that can vote should vote. I've already voted, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and if you can vote, get your vote in.
Do it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still futzing with this here.
Yeah, I have 9 votes in.
Well, if anybody wants to make an argument for why we should be in person, you pretty much have a.
You beat me to it, John.
Well, why we should have a different voting system than director point. Perhaps.
Fair enough. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can't get back to the vote thing here.
I would suggest maybe just going ahead and texting Graham. This is how we used to do it in the past too, is folks would just text him. So if this will take too much longer, I'm going to suggest we not do this voting and we just do it the old way where we texted. If folks want, that's another option.
The only problem with texting is I've got my phone tied up with the audio for director point. I can email.
Yeah. Or email.
Or email.
Hang up, I lose my audio.
Yeah. Let's just go to whatever mechanism is working, communicate with Graham directly and whatever channels available to you.
One thing I did on the iPad, I logged out and logged back in, and then the vote came up.
You could also use your browser and go to directorpoint.com, log in, and I've had no problem using it through a browser versus the app on the.
There it is.
You just go there.
I'll submit my vote for secretary so we can move on from here.
Okay.
Okay.
By text.
Okay.
I don't use the Director Point app, so I have a lot less problems, I think. I use the browser.
Yeah, I just switched over to the browser. It's much clearer there.
All right, so I have all the votes in. The person elected secretary is Dan Huntington, has 9 votes for Dan Huntington, 1 vote for Kohler McGinnis, and 1 vote for Ted Compton.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Dan. On to treasurer.
I would like to nominate myself.
Great. Kirsten nominating herself for treasurer. Sue, go ahead.
I would like to do the same.
Excellent. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, let's have a statement from each of you.
Kristen? Thank you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, so I've been on the
each
Finance and Audit Committee for a couple of years now. I appreciate the work. I appreciate the nomination, Sue. By being on the executive committee, I would then not run for the tri-state board, which is a position that I've told a lot of you folks that I'm interested in. But I would think best and high use would be treasurer, and then trying to work on the continue my work on the rate committee.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Sue.
Righty. This is the 3rd year that I have been nominated for treasurer. The last 2 was by someone else, and this year I decided I'd nominate myself. But I'd certainly appreciate your confidence and vote. My background, as I've stated in the past, is in finance and business. I spent 18 years of my career in the upper management level in the finance department at the Rural Utility Service, analyzing budgets and making loans to electric co-ops. So I'm highly qualified to perform the duties of treasurer, and I believe that I can be an asset in this position. I understand the Form 7s, the KTRAs, and after not being elected the last couple years to treasurer, I have asked to be on the FAC to not having it happen, but I have attended as many meetings there as I can. And in the event that I'm not elected treasurer again this year, I too would like to be considered for the tri-state rate design appointment. I have experience in that field as well. While serving on Empire's board, Tri-State had asked me to be on that rate design committee, and I did serve there for several years. Again, that commitment does require a lot of number crunching and financial analysis. And I believe I'm well qualified to perform those duties on behalf of LPEA. Apparently, Kirsten and I both have visited with Mr. Rabone about that assignment, and he indicated that Tri-State will honor whoever is appointed by the LPEA board. The last couple of years, I've worked really hard to continue my NRECA educational classes and to retain my Director Gold status. And I believe that if given the opportunity, I could really provide benefit to La Plata Electric as a whole. So thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go ahead and cast votes by whatever channel you would like.
So sorry, I've been able to have a vote button every time, and all of a sudden there isn't one. So
email or text directly to Drew.
Okay, to Drew.
I'm sorry, Graham. I'm looking at his face and reading.
I don't have Graham's number.
It's in your email, Bob.
Yeah, Janelle sent it.
From Janelle.
Okay.
Sorry, I spoke out of order there.
Is that an Apple number?
Here, I can send it to you, Bob.
No, I mean, I see it, but if it's not an Apple number, it won't deliver from where I live.
Oh yeah, I have an Apple phone. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, I think.
Yes.
Although with Starlink, you'd think an Android would work.
It does, it doesn't. I don't know why that is.
Dan gets it.
And I have one sort of blank result on my report on Director Point. I'm going to reach out by email to that director and verify that that was the result that they intended. All right, I have all 12 votes in. The results of the election are Sue McWilliams received 7 votes and Kirsten Skihan received 5 votes. So Sue McWilliams is elected our new treasurer.
Congratulations, Sue.
Thank you, everybody. And I appreciate the vote of confidence. I will do my best to serve you all well.
Can I just quickly chime in and say I appreciate someone else taking that role. I'm very glad to be able to serve in that, and I'm also kind of looking to take a couple things off of my calendar. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next item. So now we're doing now we are doing fast track. Do I have that right?
That's the next one I have on my list. And now that we're done with the officer elections, if we only have one candidate, we can move forward by ascension vote or voice vote or however more efficient vote everyone would like.
I'll nominate Tim to continue on the fast track board.
Tim, you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do. I would like to continue.
Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I move that we accept Tim Wheeler as fast track board by acclamation.
Do we have a second?
Second by Rachel.
All in favor of Tim Wheeler remaining as fast track director, say aye.
Aye.
Discussion first, no discussion.
Oh,
I mean, I would just say that I feel this is the board, LPEA board, and fast track. We've made a lot of progress. I think. I feel that we still have a lot of progress to make. On the other hand, to go, and that this is a important asset, and I appreciate any nomination and confidence that you have in me to continue to try and bring a greater synergy between the two organizations, two companies. And I'm remain very open to anyone calling at any time to ask any question, and I'm happy to talk or explain or provide information and take any suggestions for improvement here. So thanks very much.
Perfect. Okay. Kirsten, do you have an additional comment? Okay, all in favor of Tim, we did it. All in favor, let's do it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All opposed? Any abstained? Okay, thank you, Tim. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, CREA.
I nominate Holly.
Terrific. Need a second?
I'll
I-
nominate Sue McWilliams.
Okay.
That,
Okay.
did we finish a motion on one of the candidates before we go to the next? How's that work?
No, these are nominations. So we have,
I see.
here, you're the only
Yeah,
one nominated.
hang on
We-
a second.
Mhm. So we have two nominees, and so presume Holly, you accept the nomination,
Yes, sir.
and Sue, you accept the nomination.
Actually, you know what I would love? I think Holly has done a great job as our CREA rep. I would like to be the alternate in case she is not able to be there, but I think Holly's done a wonderful job for us.
Okay.
I'd just like to say I do really appreciate that, Sue, and I appreciate the vote of confidence from you guys. The things that CREA addresses, safety, communication, education, and governance are all things that I'm really interested in. And I'd like to present a fresh perspective on that board. Going forward, there's going to be a ton of work, and I would gratefully accept that nomination.
Okay. Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I move that we accept by acclamation Holly Metzler as the CREA representative.
And Sue McWilliams as the alternate, as she's proposed.
And Sue McWilliams, if we can do both at one time, that'd be great. Yeah, and Sue
We can do
McWilliams
that as a
alternate.
single acclamation motion.
Sure.
Okay. Well, second.
Second.
There we go. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Put your hand up, say aye.
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 All opposed? All abstained?
Thanks, Sue. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Holly.
Mhm. Congratulations, Holly. All right, Western United.
I
Sue, go ahead.
nominate Lee.
I heard Dan Huntington first nominating John Lee.
That's who I was going to nominate as well. I think he would do great there. It's a good opportunity for new directors, and I just would love to see him in that position as a learning tool for him on our board.
Terrific. Kirsten, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate myself, but I just heard such good things about John Witchell. I'm trying to, okay, so I'd like to nominate myself for that position, please.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Okay, so anybody else? John, you want to comment here?
I'll accept the nomination, and after being the annual meeting representative last year, I got a feel for it, and I do feel that it would improve my connectivity and learning with the board.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Kirsten, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure do. John, you're right. It will improve your connectivity, and it's a good place. I have been that director for 1 year, and if I wasn't treasurer, if I was treasurer, I wasn't gonna run for Western United. So actually, I withdraw my nomination. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And would you want to be the backup?
Oh yeah, I'd be. Yeah, I would like to be the alternate, please.
Okay. All right.
I'll
So
move that we accept John Lee
There we go.
As our Western United rep with Kristen as our rep.
Excellent. We have a second. Ted Compton, second. Okay, all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we now have second vote VE district director. Oh, this is, what is this?
Oh, I mean, we still need to do our roundup directors and our tri-state directors. I don't have.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought that, I think these are just misworded. Okay, let's do roundup. Or actually, let's do tri-state first. So nominations for tri-state.
I'll nominate Kohler McGinnis to continue serving on Tri-State.
Okay. Kohler, would you accept that if elected?
I do. Thank you. Yes.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Do we want to make a motion?
I move to accept Kohler by acclamation as a tri-state representative.
Excellent. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Oh, sorry, Kirsten, did you have a comment?
Yeah, discussion. One thing that we can't really affect too much is that the makeup of that board, and our members have done a really good job voting in a pretty diverse board, at least from a gender perspective. I would love to see a woman up there. Of course, there's only going to be so many more months left after Kohler does this year. So just keep in mind, if you're talking to your other peers out in the co-op world, recommend that they look at that board and think about, making an effort to make it not quite so all white male. So
Thank you for that comment. Okay, any other comments?
Kohler, want to make a statement at all?
Kohler?
Sure, I will. I appreciate the nomination. I think I'm really in a good position at Tri-State right now. I've built some strong relationships and a lot of trust, and this has made it so when I talk to people, they're encouraged to be open with me and talk about their situation as well as finding out about ours. And I look forward to continuing on. I'll put the work in needed and the travel, and I appreciate the nomination. So thank you.
Excellent. All right, thank you. All in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
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 All opposed? All abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Welcome back, Kohler. Careful what you ask for. Okay, so roundup. So we have outside, this is for outsider, right? No, this is for us. Okay.
Yeah, we have two.
Okay, great. All right, so let's open up the floor for nominations for roundup.
Nominate Sue McWilliams as a roundup board member.
Okay.
I nominate Ted Compton.
Okay.
I nominate Rachel Landis.
Okay. So just Graham, Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, but I would prefer to decline the nomination for roundup, just in preference of assuming I stay on the policy committee, putting more of my effort into that. So thanks for the nomination, but I'm going to decline.
Okay, thanks, Ted. So let's just get a quick, Rachel, would you accept that?
Oh, are we done with nominations?
Would you accept it?
Oh, yes.
Great. Sue, would you accept yours if appointed?
Yes, I would. And I'd also like to nominate John Lee to that position. Again, I think it'd be a good learning tool. I did decline last year because I was writing a lot of grants for local nonprofits, but I pretty well retired from the local nonprofit grant writing venues. So I feel more comfortable in serving this year.
And we have two positions on Roundup, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do we do these in? Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just gonna say I would like to nominate Holly. I'm just trying to think of splitting out our representation across our district.
Great. Holly, would you accept that?
I do really appreciate that vote of confidence, but I'll have to respectfully decline at this time.
Okay. Tim, go ahead.
I nominate Joe Lewandowski for this.
You know, I've only been off of that for 1 year, so I'm going to decline that. Thank you.
Okay.
Did John Lee accept or decline?
I'll accept.
Okay. So, Drew, what's the?
Nominate Kirsten. Sorry, I'm
Go
going for
ahead.
Gillette. Oh, God.
Please go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good reason, Rachel, is the Archuleta thing. It is, the voice there needs to be heard. So I will accept that, Bob, unless you would accept it. You want to be on the Roundup board?
I just really, I'm not going to add new things. So thank you.
Yeah. I think it is important to have an Archuleta voice there, and I would like to see that. Thanks, Rachel, for the reminder. So I would accept that nomination.
Okay, so we have 4 candidates right now: Sue, John, Rachel, and Kirsten. Anybody else? Tim, go ahead.
So is this a vote we would take since it's contested on director point or by virtue of
You beat me to it. What's the right move here? What's the right move here, Graham?
I mean, I would suggest that we do this on director point. The way I've been sort of thinking of doing this is that we could sort of have a knockout type vote. If if one person gets a majority in this initial round, then the remaining 3 could run against each other in that way we could use direct. All 4 candidates would be voted on in Roundup board vote 1, and then if someone gets a majority out of that, then the remaining 3 we would vote on Roundup board vote 2, and whoever gets a majority out of that would then also be elected. Does that make sense to everyone? Seem reasonably fair given our technology available?
Does that mean you select 2 under Roundup board vote 1?
So no, you can only vote 1. That was one of the technical problems we ran into. Is if we made it for 2, then it became a survey and the results were public. So you would vote for 1 candidate for Roundup board vote 1, and then we'll have a runoff between the 3 remaining candidates for the second slot if there's a majority. And I guess that would be the question would be, if one person, so we could receive a plurality here, right? And not one individual person get more than 6 votes. Would we just sort of have whoever gets the most votes in the first round be elected to that position? I think we can as a board, sort of select how we want to proceed with this election. Yeah.
Graham, could you just list again who are the valid nominees at this point?
So the nominees that have accepted nomination are Sue McWilliams, Rachel Landis, John Lee, and Kirsten Skihan.
Great. Ted, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I would be in favor of us accepting a plurality rather than a majority on both rounds. I don't see where that causes a problem, and I don't expect that we get a majority on both rounds.
So whoever receives the most votes in each round will be considered elected for that round, without it being necessarily a majority.
Okay.
Is that? I think we should maybe have a motion and vote on that.
Just to document it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that we accept a plurality of votes rather than majority on both roundup number 1 and roundup number 2.
Second by Kohler.
Okay. All in favor? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, hold hand up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? Tim, you're abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, motion carries. Okay, so let's go ahead and inside of
Do you want us to give a little blurb?
I do. I'm sitting here teeing this up. Just give me 1 second. Vote number 1. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Why don't you go ahead and give your blurb?
Great. I guess just in this regard, if helpful for the Roundup board, this is my background and kind of the field I play in, and just in this last term have seen that come out in ways that benefit the board, just in terms of, I guess examples include kind of helping with some of the grant structure pieces and processes. I think just having the ability to bring some nonprofit perspective and some of the restructure that the Roundup board is currently looking at. And I think also bringing some of that nonprofit and foundation insight. So examples include looking to restructure, and we had Roundup members kind of determining what they thought that grantees might want. And so a great nonprofit or foundation method is you go ask them. And so just presenting things like that and having the, bringing that forward to the board. So.
Great, thank you. John Lee, why don't you go ahead?
I'm willing to do the job. I haven't seen it used before. I know it assists the community, and a willing participant, but I'm equally excited for anyone else to be serving in that capacity who has passion for it, and nothing further.
Great, thanks, John. Sue, go ahead.
All right, thanks. As I kind of already gave my spiel, because as a grant writer, that's what I've done for many years now. And last year I did decline serving on Roundup just because I was still doing some local grant writing for nonprofits. So I have pretty much retired from that end of it. I am still continuing to do some grant writing, but more for institutions and larger entities that would not be applying to Roundup. So I feel like that grant writing background and experience would be helpful on the board.
Great, thank you, Sue. And then Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, John. I have been on the Roundup board before. I felt that I did a good job helping that board be better. I also was frequently the representative at the POC, the Pagosa Outreach Connection, although I always forget what the acronym stands for. I think it's Pagosa Outreach. And I think that's an important piece of having somebody local at the Pagosa outreach, because it is about the request from local. So for me, I'm considering this first vote, board vote one, more of any of the non-Archuleta folks, and I'm going to be deciding what the non-Archuleta folks are. And then depending upon how that goes, I'm going to be more interested in that second vote, since there's two. So just letting you know, I'm interested, but not necessarily on this first round.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and cast your vote in Director Point or by email or by text. How we looking, Graham?
I've had one director's ballot came in blank, so I reached out to that director to see if that's the way they wanted their ballot to appear. And
Graham, in case that's me, I don't get text down here.
yeah,
You'd have
no,
to-
it's I've received that director's confirmation. So I think sort of not to sort of weigh the ballot in favor of any of the other candidates, I'll just announce who had the most votes in this round. And the candidate with the most votes in this round was Rachel Landis. So John and Kirsten and Sue would then proceed to the next round of voting.
Terrific. Okay, so go ahead and click into board roundup, board vote 2.
Who was that said that democracy is messy, but it's the best alternative or something?
Churchill said it's the worst form of government except for every other one.
Yes, exactly. So I'm all about this. I know this is a pain in the butt, and I appreciate all of our patience.
Wait, I thought he said you can count on America to make the right choice after they've exhausted every other option.
Probably says that too.
How we looking?
I'm not seeing. Let me see. One, two. I will say this. I don't have every single vote in, but we do have a majority for one candidate. So that person has sort of insurmountable lead. I go ahead and announce that. everyone's okay with that. With the majority of the votes in this round, Kirsten Skihan wins the second roundup director position.
Great,
Terrific.
thank you very much.
Okay, congratulations to both of you. Okay, we're getting down to it here. Next, I'm losing track. What's next?
We have appoint our fast track shareholder proxy vote. Tim, do you know when the fast track annual meeting is scheduled for?
It's in the fall, I think. I can't remember exactly. September, October. I don't have it on top of my head. I can dig it up if you want.
Well, and if it hasn't been noticed yet, I also say that it'd be possible to table this until we have a firm date of when that's going to be, for people want to know what the schedule is and not sort of commit to a date and then have it conflict with their calendar.
Yeah, I think that's the right move here.
So we should probably have a motion and second to table that until we have a firm date on that.
Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, I would go ahead and move to table our appointment of the.
Terrific. In a second.
I will second it, Rachel.
Second by Colin.
Great, Rachel, second. Okay, all in discussion. All in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstained? Okay, the motion carries on that. Okay, we have the District 4 business. Or do we get everything else? I think that should.
That's from 2020.
Someone resigned.
No. Yeah,
Right,
so
that's
we're on section 4E. Is there anything else to be done before that?
No, just that last vote.
Okay. So the point of replacement for District 4 representative to round up. So this is
under Roundup's bylaws, the district director for the district where the vacancy occurs bring forward a nomination, and then that nomination is approved by the consensus of the entire board. So.
Perfect. I have a candidate. Am I allowed to weigh in here as an individual or not? Can I not make that nomination?
I believe you can. I think if we've sort of discussed it with the other District 4 directors, the procedure is that the nomination comes out of the district that's represented.
Yeah. Okay. I do, and we've had some discussion. So Tim and Sue obviously weigh in if I'm not communicating correctly. But yeah, I moved to nominate excuse me, Jillian Barkley. She's a okay, I'll make my case in a minute, but I nominate for Jillian Barkley as the District 4 representative of Roundup.
I'll second that nomination.
Terrific. Thank you, Sue. Any other nominations? Okay. Terrific. So I'll open the floor for discussion. I'll weigh in on this one. Actually, Sue, why don't you go ahead, please?
Oh, well, you could go first if you want. Okay. I would like the policy committee or committee on policy to maybe take a look at how we determine nominations for our replacements on Roundup. You know, what I've seen the last couple of years, and of course I've only been here a couple of years, but it's kind of who knows who ends up getting nominated. And I think that we're missing out on a much broader spectrum of our membership that might really want to be involved, but have no idea how, or even that there's that opportunity. So I would just like to see maybe the Committee on Policies take a look at that this upcoming year. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for that comment. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on this Stu's comment. And I actually think there's, in general, a need to revamp the system because there's a pretty big disconnect. It seems like there's the Roundup board and all the things they're working on, their niches, and then there's just randomly as a director, you're told to go find this person you maybe don't know much and maybe aren't as invested. And so I echo that and would be happy to be part of that conversation.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, you know, my recollection from the past was that the previous administrator that came from LPEA, I can't think of her name right now, just retired. She often brought candidate names forward for the directors of a particular district to consider. It is not easy as a director on your own to just find suitable candidates. It's usually at a last minute. There's hardly any heads up, and the process for the directors to actually agree on that is not always clear. So I tend to echo Sue's request for a better process for this, as well as Rachel's request. So, you know, either we're relying upon administrative support from LPEA staff, or we find a better process to find suitable candidates. I think it's a really important role. We're allocating money that members have donated, and we have to be really careful on that. So I think this process needs a better look through and refinement. And if the policies committee is willing to help, I think that's a good place to start. So I just echo that request.
Terrific. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Okay. Well, let me offer my own, again, speaking as an individual board member. I put Jillian's name forward. I did communicate with Tim and Sue, and I've known her for you know, the better part of a decade. She's been great. She's raised her kids here. She's very involved in. She's booster club president of Durango High School. She has a master's in public health, specializing in social and behavioral sciences. She's been she was president of youth lacrosse for a while in a previous life. She's done board positions for various sports and community events. She's a terrific person, very smart and capable. I think it should be awesome. So that's my comment on Jillian Barclay. So, all right, go ahead, Ted.
I would go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Jillian Barclay as the District 4 representative, as the new District 4 representative.
Terrific. Second.
Second by Kohler.
Great. Okay, discussion.
What's the length of the term?
They're 2-year terms, and you can serve 2 consecutive terms.
So but this came out of resignation. So is it fulfilling? I think, isn't it? Didn't it? And so is it just completing that term? So we would vote again at another point in the next.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe this is just the appointment to the unexpired portion of the term.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Terrific. Rachel, go ahead.
Just want to earmark after the vote. I've got an action statement.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. All right. All in favor? Put your hand up. Say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained. Okay, motion carries. Welcome Jillian Barclay to Roundup. Good luck.
Thank you, John.
Okay, any other votes that we need to conduct? Because I think then we wanted to have a couple of, there's one more comment before we moved on from the agenda. Holly, go ahead.
We were going to talk about the rate committee, Tri-State Rate Committee. And I would like to nominate Kirsten to that position.
Right, thank you.
I'll
Okay.
second. Oh, we don't need a second. That's right.
Dan, go ahead.
I just wondering what Jessica's feeling is. Do you want to continue to serve on this, or what's the story here? First I've heard of it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for asking. So I think, well, how this all began is because Tri-State did reach out to some of us asking us to be on the rate committee. We didn't have time to do a vote, and there's no formal process for this, as it was a rate committee, not a formal process that we've had to deal with. So talked to John, Witchell, and Kohler, and they both thought it would be a good idea for me to serve on the rate committee since it's connected with the FERC proceedings that we have currently. As we all remember, we're going through FERC on the rate that they had already passed last year, but there's reserve issues that deal specifically what's happening with the rate committee. Plus, it's a good opportunity for me to get to know the rates in more detail, as you know, myself and staff are the recipients and how do we deal with increase of rates. So it's really important that we understand the specifics and be involved in the rate making. So yes, I've really enjoyed it. Dan and I have been partnering. Kirsten expressed a big interest, so she's been joining all the phone calls. And I think what's happening now, though, is that the FERC proceedings on the BDP and CTP are heating up, taking more of my time and Dan's time. I'd still really love to be on the committee, but I think I need to be realistic that I also have to make sure that I'm focused on home and what's happening at LPEA, because it is a big commitment and there's a lot going on. So definitely support Kirsten taking that role over, since she's already been involved thus far in all the meetings. She's committed to working with Dan and myself so that we stay involved. Dan will be actually attending next week as well. Tri-State did talk to Dan and I and specifically asked if we would be more involved on a granular level in regards to specifics. The rate committee is at kind of at a higher level, but Reg asked Dan and myself if we would work on more of the details with them on the mechanics. So appreciate you asking, Dan, but yeah, I think it's probably better for myself if I would focus more on what's going on, especially with the fire season heating up. There's a lot happening at the district. So thank you.
Ted, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Kirsten to the Tri-State Rate Committee.
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, discussion.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say is it is really important, and I know I've been putting a lot of stuff into the board packet. I really suggest some of those things when I say, oh, you should take a look at this 123-page document. You might want to take a look as we get more sophisticated in the market, and as we divide out our where we're buying our power from. It's ever more important that we understand every single aspect of those rates. So that's it. What I'm saying is I really encourage you guys to be as involved as possible. And that's it. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. Sue, go ahead.
Thank you. To Kirsten's point, it really is an important position or committee to be on at Tri-State. And I know that Kirsten is super involved and concerned about those rates, as I was and am also. So I am glad that we do have her wanting to do that. As I had stated earlier, I would be really interested in serving as well, but now being treasurer, I don't want to try to tackle both. So I highly encourage us to go ahead and appoint Kirsten.
Okay, Kohler.
I just want to back up those comments as well. I think Kirsten has really got the mindset for that rate committee. It's a very complex committee with a lot of different moving parts, and I think she'll do a great job. So thank you, Kirsten, for stepping up.
Okay. Any additional comments? All right, all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
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 All abstain, excuse me, all opposed? Any abstained? Okay, motion carries.
Thank
Yep.
John, if I could just get one last kind of housekeeping piece. Now the elections are over, in a real world setting, Janelle and I destroy all the old ballots. I've got a digital equivalent of that. If we could just sort of get a quick motion that and vote that everybody authorizes me to go ahead and delete all of our electronic ballots from today.
So moved.
So made.
Kohler, all discussion, all in favor? Hands up, thank you. All opposed? All abstained? There you go. Okay, I think we had a couple of closing thoughts before we pushed on to the next item. Rachel, did you have a couple of comments you wanted to offer up here?
Well, one was just a really basic follow-up to the roundup nomination process. And so at the roundup level, we're in the midst of kind of doing some structural documentation and then some restructuring also. And so just a proposal that we could at that board, the roundup board level, just put together a suggested process for appointing new nominees that we'd bring to this board to consider, or to the policy committee, wherever we're directed to do it. And hopefully that'll help kind of link the two and make some more sense for the future. So that'd be one thing, if that's okay.
Yep, I think I certainly felt a fair amount of discomfort on the ad hoc nature of it. And so I think that would be time well spent to at least revisit that, particularly as it relates to creating a mechanism to recruit the best talent we can find for each position. And I think Roundup is a good representative of that. But I think that's ultimately up to the policy committee to do that. But I think they hear you loud and clear. And I will definitely take a note to follow up with them individually and see how that fits into the schedule for having that revisited. Or did you want more on that here and now?
No, I think that's good. I just quick clarification. And it sounds like I need to talk with the policy committee. I'll just ask them if they want us to put together a suggested process, and then they can consider that.
Yeah, I don't think we're set up. Well, we're not agended to do it, and we're not set up to make any decisions right now.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Just for whenever.
Yeah, I think a recommendation belongs down at the policy level, and then it can bubble up where people have a chance to socialize it and reflect on what they believe the right answer is. Sorry, Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the important things about a good democracy is an informed electorate. And I really appreciate that, Kohler put out his statement and I put out my statement. I would like to encourage that in future elections, we almost do nominations earlier, because then we're asking each of us as board members to make a kind of an on-the-fly decision based upon a 10-second thing. So I would like to investigate how we can be a little more thoughtful on the process. And again, I understand it's not at this time that we would be doing that, but I'd like to put a word in for that.
Thank you for that. Again, I appreciate the sentiment here, and we will, let's not get into the design at this stage, though. Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, just sort of tentatively accepting Rachel's recommendation, for the policy committee to review the Roundup board appointment process, and just wanting to raise the question at the same time. All the rest of our committee chairs, I think, are defined by the election we just had, and sort of treasurer is the chair of the finance and audit committee, and so I'm assuming until otherwise told or accepted that I'll remain chair of the policy committee, but I'm certainly open to, I think that's the purview of the president. So yeah, just want to make it clear that I feel like I'm that and accepting Rachel's statement at this point, unless that changes.
Great. Okay. Tim, did you have sorry, Rachel, you're next.
It's just the fall, and this is actually one of the big things, because I know at our last meeting I'd been like, hey, let's think about how we do elections and try to do it a little bit differently and do some process improvement. And so John and I did talk offline about that, and the balls were already in motion, or the wheels were turning, or whatever the phrase is for this year. But one of the things, to Kirsten's point, I think there's some really great opportunities to, like, these positions have the potential to be really impactful. And we've heard over the last couple of years that sometimes folks would like more direction. Sometimes we get frustrated when one of our reps goes a certain way and the board doesn't know about it. And so in general, just think that I would be very excited to sit down and noodle around some ideas on kind of, for our representatives, for our elections, like kind of some better processes and the backup information to support it, like a one pager about what all these roles do. And then just on a kind of applied level, I think it'd be interesting in the next COW or at some point, just to have a discussion for each of these reps, to get their sense of what they're interested in doing, and then also to help inform from a board perspective if we have any kind of strategic thoughts, ideas, or direction. So.
Perfect. Appreciate that. I think the intention here was not for an action item to come out of this discussion, but really to introduce the idea. And so more to come on both offline and in subsequent committee meetings. So, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, this is also typically the time that the president appoints committee members, right? So I'm not sure if you are prepared to do that, but without it, the committees that are in process aren't necessarily, we need to take some action either to keep the same ones until you're ready, or hear from you as to who you would like on a committee, and is this also an opportunity to request or not request either staying or removing or adding to that committee from the particular directors. So there's the policy committee, there's the FAC. I think those are the only two at the moment. But
yeah, and Tim, that what typically happens at this point, right, is that we we'll go into this meeting not knowing who the president was necessarily going to be, and so then the president has the sort of authority to consult with the different people that want to be on those committees. I think, as I recall last year, it was typically the appointments kind of got made in the interim as under the typical rules of order. A committee member that remains eligible for the committee would sit on the committee until their replacement is appointed or until they resign. So I think that all the committees would sort of stand as they are, with the exception of Sue taking over Bob's role ex officio on the FAC. And then we've got some sort of time to adjust the committees. I don't know that we have to do that here and now.
Yeah, so if I remember, I need to run around and talk to everybody and just get their gut check and then make those decisions, not in real time. But I will make that in the next, we'll do that quickly.
Great.
Is
That's all.
that
I'm
good?
just trying to get clarity on where we're going.
Terrific. Okay, so let's bring this conversation, this agenda item to a close. I want to sort of take our break right now, but I need to reset everybody's expectations around schedule. We are 30 minutes behind, and staff has a time-sensitive, a hard stop at 3:30 on an acute issue that they need to deal with. So that is not. So let's just do our best to give them the room that they need to, and try to get this thing wrapped up by 3:30 so that they can deal with their issues. But that's that. So let's go ahead and take our 10-minute break now instead of after CEO reports, if you guys are good with that.
And just to note that when we come back from that, the consent agenda will be our next item based on our reordered agenda.
Terrific. I think everybody just needs to stand up and stretch their legs for a minute.
For sure. Just
okay. So it is 10:36. We will see you at 10:46. Thank you. Okay, cool. All right, so let's focus. We're going to do the consent board items per the change up in the agenda. Kohler, go ahead.
I just make a motion to approve the consent board items as they are.
Dan Huntington seconds.
Terrific. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
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 All opposed? And all abstained? Okay, thank you. Let's focus, turn the mic over to Jessica for the staff, for the CEO and staff reports.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my dashboard. I think I finally got it. Does that work for everybody? Okay. All right. I will start off by going through the key performance indicators. Okay, so we are monitoring the safety number, and I was going to have Dan or Jerry give a brief update as to why that's a yellow. So
it's still a yellow because since it's a rolling average, it's still coming down from March's incident that I explained last month with the faulty hot arm.
Great, thank you. And then the other items that we're watching are cash reserves, equity, and Carl's going to speak to that in his finance report. The beneficial electrification sales are a little bit down, and that's just a factor of just more human behavior about if they're buying or, you know, what the market is showing. So obviously that's not concerning to us because it fluctuates month to month. And you can see the graph in the appendix on that issue. Okay, moving on. Have some fun pictures in here of our linemen. Okay, this is my page. I think the biggest issue was the settlement conference with a buy down payment. Those are pretty lengthy, but it's really good opportunity to hear from the different parties. We're hopefully getting close on that. Matt will be able to give the brief later today. Any questions on this? Okay. We had one accident to report. It was none of our staff, thankfully. This was a contractor. So that person is recovering, but we can't talk too much about it because it's actually being investigated by Federated Insurance. But just wanted you to all know that there was an accident with a contractor. It's being investigated by CREA and Federated, and more details will come after they do the investigation. So let's see what else is on this. This line worker appreciation was really great opportunity to thank our line workers. And that was the picture up above. I'll just scroll back up here. We got them all together. You can see one of their sweatshirts. One of our linemen is actually on the sweatshirt. So that was fun. So I think Jerry did a great job, and Garrett on having that applause for them. Kohler?
Yeah, just a quick comment on that picture there, because I go to the gym every morning, and this morning I got to the gym. One of your linemen had a vest on that's full of weights. I mean, I could hardly pick the thing up. He was all sweaty, and I asked him what he did, and he climbed with another lineman and a couple other people to the top of Smelter this morning. He was back down, and I got there about 6:30. So he's back down by 6:30 and get ready to go to work. Impressive bunch of folks, I'll tell you. They're tough.
Was that John Kenny? John?
It was.
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, he is. All right, Sue.
And I just wanted to say that I've had quite a few members come up to me and say how happy they are that we have gone with xeriscaping, you know, especially with the drought that we have now. So just wanted to pass along kudos on that as well.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, we appreciate that. I think it was shocking for some of our staff, but I think everybody understands in this water climate, we need to be doing our part. Appreciate that. Joe. I'll hit the button. Maybe you can. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I lost video for some reason. Yeah, I just want ditto on the xeriscaping. I'm glad we're doing that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Okay. This is a really good picture at the bottom. I just wanted to highlight. We went ahead and submitted it for our photo contest. Jenny did that for us and we won. So that was Dalton taking it from one of the storms. I believe that was this winter. And it did win the April photo contest. So pretty dramatic picture. Joe?
No, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, so.
Okay, thank you again. Back to the sharing power supply vision. And this kind of goes back to my email of last month, requesting not everybody's schedule, but kind of the top, like yours and Dan's schedule of when you're going to be doing presentations. You know, I can't imagine that I'm the only director that somebody hasn't come up to me and said, oh, I see so-and-so had a presentation there and I missed it. When can I catch it again?
Sure.
So that was kind of the intent behind the request. You know, if we as directors don't know where you guys are going to be presenting, it's pretty hard then to say, well, gosh, they're going to be up at Fort Lewis next Tuesday, or you could catch them, you know, at someone Citizens Alliance at a certain date. So that was the intent behind the request. And I still think it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are hard because we'll get called pretty quickly, but I think I can work with Dan to see if there's, you know, kind of the bigger events that we'd attend. I think some of us feel a little awkward sending it out though, because a lot of those you have to be a member, like the Kiwanis Club and those things. So, but for sure on these larger presentations, we want to make sure the board knows about them. We actually give them to you. So we can try to figure something out soon. All right, Holly.
I'd just like to reiterate what Sue is saying, because I think it's really super duper important that we bring the public and our stakeholders along in the process and the understanding of how this all works together. So was this presentation that's mentioned here, was that Dan's presentation that he did for the board?
Yes.
Okay. I would also like to, because I did ask if Dan could do some of these in Pagosa, and I was informed that he's way too busy.
Yep.
So please, I understand, and I really appreciate that he's really busy. Like I said, I think it's important to bring our stakeholders along from all segments. So, you know, I had a couple ideas of maybe even being able to do a presentation of my own. I would, of course, run it past you guys to make sure I'm all factual. But I just want to get this message into Pagosa as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Holly, that's a great point. What I suggested is that, you know, Dan is actually, this was a rash of presentations and he's buried now. So what my suggestion and offer when you asked me about this is we're going to train staff up so that they can give the presentation. So we are doing that. And also we did post it online so folks can also catch that, the presentation. Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate Hillary and her staff on the annual report. It was very easy to read and very concise. So good job on that.
Thank you, Joe.
Here, here.
Okay. You saw the broadband partnership email that I sent to you. Yes, the Herald, they went out a little premature. In fact, I don't even think the Southern Utes had agreed to joining the group. No application has been made. So we are still waiting on this, but we just did want to report back. This is something that you, the board, asked us to do in regard to the broadband policy you set for us, is give updates. This is one of those. We're pretty excited about this one. This is a game changer, we feel. So we're just waiting on what if the Southern Utes are, when they're going to agree to the joint application, when we're going to send that. Kirsten?
Yeah, over at the Community Development Corporation meeting last week, I got tagged a couple of times from folks who were so excited about it. And a lot of this is also made possible because of the CDOT stuff that's coming down 160. And that's an area that, although FASTTRACK can't take advantage of, this is where the community events, the communities can take advantage of. So I'm glad that we're involved in all and as many ways as we can in broadband.
Yes, absolutely. And along those lines, we are working more closely with FASTTRACK, actually, having more group team meetings to talk about these things to see how they can benefit from opportunities like this. So while it's maybe not this one, there are others where they can benefit. Okay, moving on. Here's the picture of the landscaping. If you haven't seen it, this is just a small picture. So that was the presentation of the dashboard. I'm going to scroll up here to accidents and incidents. So we did take off the COVID numbers because those were just 0. Although we did have 4 positives this last month. So there is a uptick in COVID. So just wanted to remind folks to be careful. We've had some pretty sick employees with this latest round. So just want to make sure folks are cognizant that it's still going around the community and it's actually increasing. Kirsten? Oh, okay. Any other questions on the dashboard? Tim?
Yeah. What's a burpee?
If you haven't done
that
one,
was a
don't do
seed
it.
company.
I would not encourage you. It's a athletic move where you fall on the ground and you do like a push up and you jump your feet back and up and then you jump up. They're terrible, but this is a way for our team to get together. Like Kohler said, we have some linemen that are very athletic, and so we had teams of those to compete. Don't ever do it though.
Sounds like I'm glad I don't know what it is.
No, you don't.
Okay, pushing on. Last questions or comments for Jessica? Holly, go ahead.
On page 41 of 163, I was just curious, one of your targets for prepare for the future is 5,000 kilowatt of controllable distributed energy resources. Where are we standing right now?
So you said page 41?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me share that so people can see it.
Hillary, do you have that number that I provided you for the annual report on that one by chance at your disposal
Which one?
for the controllable load? When we report on the North Star stuff.
Yeah. I don't
And
have
we might have
that.
to get back with you on that, Holly.
It's not a big deal. I was just curious.
Yeah, basically all of our ETS, basically what goes to that right now is the ETS load and the ETS load with, there's a special Stethus Connect that goes with it, and the electric vehicles, and starting to bring on some water heaters now that have that.
Okay. John, I think you're muted still, but I think you're saying, okay, if there's no other questions, I'll hand it over to Carl.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Okay.
I knew what you were saying, John. Forgive my voice and the occasional cough. Unfortunately, I am one of the 4 people that Jessica talked about. For those of you who were at the FAC last week, definitely better than I was then. But yes, it wasn't very nice. So, and isn't very nice. I will share my screen with you. Okay, so from the beginning, April 2022 financials. We'll try and keep this pretty tight as I don't have anything exceptional to report to you. April is one of our months where we have just paid our quarterly long-term debt payment. So at the end of April, we were not at our board approved range of 16 to 20% for cash. We are, as of today, at that point, just over 16%. So we will touch on that later when we talk about the financial goals discussion that we had at the Finance and Audit Committee. We also have our orange tick for equity, which remains above the current range. Once again, we're going to talk about that. Just to reiterate the point, the reason that's high is because of the high margin last year, and we've kind of gone through Q1, which is generally a higher margin month. You'll notice for April, we actually had a negative margin, and that's what we expect for the next few months. So it's, as I said, to reiterate the point, there's 2 ways you can get a high equity percentage. Either you make good margins or you don't retire your capital credits. We certainly did retire our capital credits last year, close to 6 million. So this is a high margin impact. As we know, we're also going to be talking about doing a capital credit retirement, which will drive this number down. Everything else is in range. So let's look at some highlights. So our operating costs were pretty tight to our forecast, but slightly under 69,000. Labor, once again, was pretty much spot on the budget. I think we've done a really good job in forecasting that. Delinquent accounts, once again, very, very low. Our sales were slightly above forecast, with industrials being higher than they were last year, and we were anticipating lower, although may be a different story. We'll see how that pans out. So gross margins, though, although these electric sales were above forecast, our gross margin was slightly under. There's a couple of factors at work here. We did have some net metering buyback expense that happened in April, And I know, Kirsten, you had a question on this. One of our local generators, the waste heat recovery system, we had an error in March that we had to reconcile in April. So gross margin was slightly too high in March. So that's around 50,000-60,000 had to be adjusted in April to make sure that year to date was correct. So with those two factors, that's why your gross margins are slightly below the forecast. But because of those savings and costs, our operating margin is slightly over forecast. Now, these numbers are slightly different to the ones that you saw at the FAC, which I talked about at FAC. We were still at a preliminary stage there. So that's why these are slightly different. And also, I believe the numbers on the dashboard are slightly different as well, although nothing material. And the targets were still met or not met as per the discussion. So I will leave it at that. And I see, Tim, you have a question.
Yeah, Carl, thank you. So yeah, I had to leave the FAC prior to getting to this discussion. So forgive me if I'm going over old ground here, but just to clarify, so when you're talking about the net metering buyback payments, that's the true up, I believe, not right?
Correct. Yes.
It's the yearly true up, right?
Yep.
Not necessarily buying back excess.
Right. So in some cases, it's not a buyback, as you say.
Right. And then this increase, was that significantly different for the year over what we had budgeted?
I think it was pretty close. Dan, do you have any thoughts on that? I know we did budget something. I think it was perhaps a little too low.
Yeah, I mean, so it does creep up every year, and it depends on how sunny the year is in general too, on how much that all comes into play. I'm assuming you're referring to the increase in the net metering buyback. Is that what you're saying, Tim?
Yeah, so there's a cost increase associated with net metering buyback. I've heard from Carl here that part of it is the difference between 1 month or another. So I'm asking, I would assume we would have budgeted for this when you take it on 2022 yearly basis, right? That there would be a buyback and so based on that, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and this was
how big the deviation is for the year.
And this was the first year we're trying to do it, because what would happen is there would be a big hit in the month of April, / May when this would hit. And this is the first year we've actually tried to spread that out over month by month. And, but there still is a little bit of a cruel adjustment there at the final month. So I think everything's pretty tight. That should have had a very minimal.
Yeah, I mean,
impact.
That was, I think, about 25,000-30,000.
All right, so from a yearly budget standpoint, this is just a minor blip. It sounds like that this increase in cost, and maybe there was more solar installation than we anticipated, or something like that, or more sunny days, as you said, right? Is that?
I'd have to look at some of these a little closer to really dig into that and get back with you.
Okay. I'm just thinking in the next budgeting, the budgeting for the next year, what we might learn from this. So. All right, thank you much.
Great. All right, any other questions or comments for Carl?
Thank you.
Excellent. Nice job as always, Carl. We appreciate it a lot. So, all right, pushing on. let's get, we already took our break, so we're pushing on to item 6, board action agenda. A, Finance and Audit Committee update. Who's driving the bus?
I am. All right, the Finance and Audit Committee met most recently on our last Thursday, whatever day that was exactly, very recently. And what we've been spending our time on is really digging into our goals, because we said we were going to revisit them and decide if they need adjustment. And we came back to you last month and said a couple things about where we were headed, and then we finalized that discussion at our meeting last Thursday. The 2 goals that we really decided and we're recommending, I guess it's under action, and Carl has the more detailed version of this forthcoming, but we think we should revise the cash goal, which currently is between 16 and 20%, to a little wider range between 12 and 20%. And after lots of debate and discussion, we feel like that's sufficient cash, given the nature of our business and the continuous cash flow that comes from being a utility, that the fact that when we pay out capital credits, it drives that cash down and we're doing the right thing, and it shouldn't feel like we're doing the wrong thing relative to a goal. So the goal change in cash in our recommendation will be to go from 16 to 20 to 12 to 20, a little wider range, but totally sensible given the business that we're in. The other goal we're recommending changing is the equity goal, which currently goes from 45 to 50. We're also going to broaden that quite a bit from 40 to 55. And the reason is that we're going to keep building equity over the next year until we do that partial buy down payment. And then that equity, for all the right reasons, is going to drop significantly. So while it is true that we're widening the goal so that we aren't out of range, it also is the sensibility of the business that makes total sense to us as a committee. We do not want to change our margin goals, which were set a couple of years ago, but they will be revisited, even though you may know, as you studied the finances, we're exceeding the margin goals significantly. That also drives up our equity, which is good, but we don't want to change the margin goal until we have a chance to revisit it in a couple of years after the partial contract is implemented, in which case a new number might make sense there. The other goals that we have, debt and MDSC, won't change. They are driven primarily by provisions in loan agreements that we have and those sorts of requirements by lenders. We do have a proposal for managing that equity goal, that 40 to 55 new goal. You don't just turn on a dime and change that. So we've adjusted policy 201 as a recommendation that has a guiding principle that really says we're only going to add borrowing if we need it for capital and plant equipment investment. But we don't borrow if we're going to pay for capital credits. That should come out of margins. So that should be incorporated into policy 201, and Carl will go through that recommendation in a minute. You also saw a memo on the capital credits reimbursement plan from Carl that you'll see. And then lastly, we talked about what do we do with that money from when Tri-State reduces rates and we realize a savings. And there's a bit of debate that should happen here at the board on whether that goes back to members as a small bump in their monthly, which is good. I understand that's meaningful to many people, but should it possibly go into fire mitigation? And as I look out my east window, a mile and a half away, and see this 600-acre fire burning, which wasn't caused by electrical issues, but it's how quickly those things become kind of monumental in our fire risk world today. That's, in my mind, a smart way to spend that money. So those are the highlights of our meeting last week. All members were present, and I look forward to handing off the baton to Sue to carry this forward. So best of luck. Any questions? Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question on the cash goal, and I apologize I didn't make the FACT meeting last week. You probably discussed this, but I know we're usually got the marker to pay attention to it, and it seems to bounce back and forth get back into compliance and kind of get out. And the question I have is moving it down, does that give us less visibility on maybe a possible downtrend as far as the cash goes? Did you guys discuss maybe a possible rolling average or rolling mean as far as where that would be?
Yeah, we didn't discuss using a different way to quantify as a rolling, like a rolling 3-month average or something, which would flatten it out to your point. But I think the net effect would be the same, that we've analyzed that if we're at 12%, that's, in this kind of business, that's sufficient cash to have on hand. And the only reason that you'd be worried about going below that goal when it was at 16 is if you decided, gee, I don't want to go below that goal, you'd actually hold on to cash that you should be turning back to members. So to your point, you could recalculate, but I think you'd get to the same place, that having an average cash that's up in that 16 is too much cash laying around. We're holding on to money that can go back to members. So I know Carl, I'm sure has a point here to make on that. But we didn't look at a rolling average, but we do feel very confident that 12% is sufficient cash for all of our needs.
So that's helpful, and I think that's kind of the first I've heard that 16 is too high. That's what worried me. If we drop it down to 12, are we sending it out too much? But I think you've clarified that, so thank you.
Yeah. I think it's all about, it's just like your home budget. That's being too safe. Like you're not paying for things you should for the welfare of your family if you're keeping the money too much just sitting in a bank. So that's my thought. Carl, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Bob, that I've got a kind of condensed version of what we went through at the FAQ, and that addresses some of those questions. So if I'll run through that real quick. I know
right
we're
ahead.
kind of
Take it away,
behind
Carl.
schedule.
Pleasure working with you.
You too, Bob. Thank you. And welcome, Sue. Thank you. I want to put my hand down, not mute myself. Right. Financial goals. Here we go. Okay. I want to thank the Finance and Audit Committee for the really excellent discussion we had on this. I think it was really useful. So what are the current goals? As we know, the operating margin being 1.5% of revenue, which goes up to 2, which goes up to 2.5, which goes up to 3, and then stays there. Cash 16 to 20, debt lower than equity. MDSC is not actually one of our goals. It is a debt covenant, but in policy 201, it says we will not violate this covenant. And equity, as Bob said, 45 to 50. So why change them? Well, things change, and we set them 2 years ago. And I think the idea is we'll keep this kind of 2-year plan as a good way, as a good time frame to see, are things changing, what's going on. And the thing here, and I think we'll really get into this when we look at the cash, is they really should help us identify issues that need to be addressed. So if we're under, let's do something about it. Right, so these are the proposals, as Bob said, 12 to 20, 40 to 55, the others remain unchanged. So let's look at this cash goal. That's not how that's meant to work, but never mind. Okay, so the orange, which has kind of become this sort of mustardy color, is the current range, and the green, which is meant to appear very dramatically, is meant to be the new range. Obviously, when I edited this, I didn't do it correctly. So you'll see the blue line is what we've been looking at since January 21. And we dip under this range frequently. Usually when we're paying that quarterly debt payment, we go around 14-ish. And then we have these other numbers where we're closer to 12, and those were related to capital credit retirements. So the idea being, we know we're going to get into this 12 to 16 at times, and we don't really do anything about it. I just come to you and say, look, I've got a red cross, but I know why. And you go, oh, okay, that's fine. So what I'm suggesting, and the board, the FAC approved, was to, you know, we know it's going to be 12 at times, and we don't see that as problematic. That is, you know, a month and a half of costs, assuming they're pretty flat, which they are for us, other than power, which kind of depends. So if we do go under 12, then we know we've got a problem. This is, you know, 12 to 20 is business as usual. Unfortunately, our KRTAs, which are always such a good source, don't have one just about cash. They do have two that reference current assets. And we have been, for the last 5 years, consistently above the Colorado average for these ratios. One of them's a current ratio, so I know that's more than just cash, but it shows we're not doing anything unusual. I only have one other co-op that I've worked at as a reference point, but they used to do 10%. So I think 12 is not anything to be concerned about and is still pretty conservative. So let's jump to equity. As before, my animation isn't working. So we've got the orange bar is what it was. The green box is where we'd like it to be. Blue is the history. And we think, as Bob said, we're above 50 and we're going to be for a while until we go out and borrow the funds to finance the BDP. And then we're going to drop to around 40. Now, 40 is a number that I've chosen with some deliberation. CFC feel that 40 is, we shouldn't really be going lower than that. And I've actually had some discussions with their contemporaries at CoBank, and they feel exactly the same way. So for a distribution co-op, 40 is a good floor. And as you can see, for the latest KRTAs based on the 2020 data, be interesting to see what 2021 says. 53.64% is average. So we're not doing anything crazy. 40 to 55 seems like a good range to be at. Okay, so we did talk about operating margin, but agreed we would leave it as it is. And the same for the others. So I will kind of skip through those. Okay, so to summarize, we're going to reflect our current reality and industry standards. MDSC should reflect that covenants. If that changes, then we change. Then we would just follow the guidance of our lender. The new cash range would trigger action if not met. Essentially, you know, if we have to figure out what we do to get that cash balance up if it goes under 12. And as Bob said, we revisit after the partial contract is implemented. So I believe the plan is that we get a show of hands if this is good, and then we would work on a new policy 201 for your approval next month. Thank you. Any questions on that? Cola.
Yeah, thank you. That helps me out quite a bit. And also what I would like is, you know, these charts that you have, like the cash goals chart on page 65 and 163, I think are really valuable. Maybe we could see that a little more often, a couple times a year, or maybe once a quarter, because that helps quite a bit. So thank you. So
Thanks,
I'm
Carl.
in support of changing the goals as suggested.
Anyone else for Carl? Okay, onward. All right.
Do we need a vote, or these are action items, are they not?
I mean, I think Bob, we actually, you know, bring these back as as an amendment to policy 201, but I think Carl was looking for at least some confirmation of the bulk of the board that if we bring back the 201, I don't, I think Carl, you were looking for some sort of affirmative direction here, right?
Yeah, but if we list it as an action item, that's what the point of that is in an agenda. That it calls for a vote on the goals and the policy.
That's right. Yes, that's right. We need a vote to agree to the goals, and then we would kick it over to the policy committee to codify it in the policy.
So I'll move that I've got my hand up, nobody's called on me, so.
Tim, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm going to speak up here, sorry. That is what Jessica just described is what we discussed in the FAC meeting. And so I'll make a motion that we adopt these revised goals. Then we can alter the policy accordingly.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Kirsten, go ahead.
So this is the discussion phase. I'm good with the goals. I think that we should approve those. One of the things that was brought up was that we don't borrow money to pay capital credits, and I don't think that's part of the goals. I just wanted to make sure that all we're voting on here right now is the goals.
And that's in that aspect should be in the policy revision second. And you're right, the motion is only about the goals.
So then we'll have our input to that via the policy committee.
Via the policy committee. Joe, you're up.
Yeah, I just want to thank the FAC for for doing this. I know this is a lot of work and a lot of analysis, and I'm really glad that you looked at that cash balance, because it always seemed to be higher than it needed to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Holly, you're next.
Great, thank you. I do appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this, and I like sitting in on those FAC committee meetings. The only thing I'm going to support the change in the goals. The only thing that I would say is it's kind of nice, because when there's a little mark on there, it gives you the feel for the rhythm of how things, the debt payments are made, and, kind of gives me a feel for how the cooperative breathes, if you will. So that would be the only thing that, I will miss if we do change the goal.
Yeah, I think if I could just respond, I think that you would get a more meaningful check. Like, we got to do something if there's a check now, instead of we check it and say, yeah, but we still have plenty of money. Why are we talking about it? So it should be, the idea would be to have more meaningful red flags raised. And so we'll still have that at a level that makes sense for the business.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can see that. Maybe include something like Kohler was saying, that graph on page 65 every so often.
I'm sure Carl's a graph genius there, man. He'll love to keep bringing that up. Tim.
So we have the motion. I can wait on this, but I had another question on a different part of the finances. I'm not sure when to ask that question. So
should we do the vote on the goals, and then Carl will field your questions further on financial?
Perfect.
Back to you, John. Should we do that?
Yep. We're done with discussion, and all in favor of the motion, put your hand up, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Okay, Tim, you had a comment?
Right, on the performance statistics part 2, page 60, I believe, in the packet. Two things I noticed. One is own use kilowatt hours year to date is pretty significantly below what was budgeted. And I'm curious if that's just an anomaly of timing or something, or did did all that xeriscaping mean we don't need as much electricity or something I'm not sure. So I was just curious what was going on there. And then there's one other one, which was the number of new services connected dropped the year to date. And I wonder if there's any implication in that.
I can speak to the own use. I think we budgeted that anticipating that more folks would be 100% in the office. Obviously, we did this, last summer, but we've kind of retained that half and half schedule, so that's why that's somewhat lower. There's obviously weather considerations and heating and AC as well, and I think I know one thing was we tried to discourage staff from using space heaters where possible, so that might be part of it. I don't know. I know people still get chilly. As for new services, I know it's slightly down. I don't think we're seeing quite as much movement into the city, but I'm really kind of guessing there. It's I can tell you that at my apartment building, you still see at least 3 or 4 U-Haul trucks every week. So I'm not exactly sure.
Thanks, Carl. Let's, Kirsten, one last question here and let's push on.
Yeah, concerning the own use, and when we get the electric trucks, I imagine that might go up, or as a percentage, is it just going to be a blip? Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, own use will be part of, electric trucks will be part of own use.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense for the size. Is it really going to make any difference in our own use? Well, yes, it'll go up, but is it going to go up 1% or 0% or?
Yeah, we can look at that. It's probably pretty negligible at this point until a lot of fleets start getting added.
Okay.
If own use goes up, gas will go down, so it's a good thing.
Okay. All right, let's push on. Committee on Policies update, and we got some possible amendment to Series 300.
Yeah, just clarification, John. Are we A2 and 3? No action there.
Yeah, we still need to pass the those 2 resolutions under the Finance and Audit Committee.
I'm sorry, I'm getting hungry. Okay, let's back up here. Ted, you're absolutely right. So we approved the financial goals. So we're looking at resolution 2022-07, allocation of previous year's margins. Why don't we get a motion open so we can chat about this formally?
I move that we adopt. Sorry, go ahead, Kohler.
Go for it, Kohler.
I'll move that we go ahead and approve resolution 2022-07. And I do have a comment during discussion.
Terrific, thanks. Can we get a second?
Second, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, let's open the floor for discussion on this matter. Go ahead, Kohler.
Just a quick typo in the very last paragraph there, the one starting with I, Dan Huntington. In the second line, it's missing the A again, so it should read, the above is a true and correct copy. So just a typo.
Okay. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, on that same page, was it 71, the resolution, in the second paragraph up, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Powell Electric Association authorizes the allocation of, should it be all instead of the 2021 operating and non-operating margins to its members?
It's the same verbiage as the last couple of years, so I'm assuming it's okay.
I mean, if you guys want to amend it, you can. It's, I mean, the operating and non-operating margins sort of presumes all of them. It's not,
okay.
not a portion of them. It's
It seems awkward of the, anyway. all right,
Okay. All right. Kirsten, go ahead.
Gotta hurry.
So as discussion, should we be seeing the staff presentation on the capital credits revisited or not? That's for 8. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Hold your hand up and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Let's push on to resolution 2208. Let's get the motion opened and then dig in.
I move to approve resolution 2208.
Thank you, John. Can we get a second?
Second, Tim.
Tim, thank you. All right, discussion.
Do we want the presentation on this one?
Carl, rather than going through the full presentation, why don't you give us a 30-second summary here and go from there?
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind the board, we had talked about some of these where we give the presentation during the FAQ and then we videotape them. So I think we had all discussed this previously that we wouldn't be going back through presentations, but Carl can quickly go through what we summarized and show the graph.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so obviously the allocation is what it is. We allocate all of our margins. The retirement, as we normally would do it in the fall, one of our tasks for this year was to improve our communication on what capital credit allocations and retirements are. So we decided we would stack them pretty much on top of each other so that a communication could go out to the members and ex-members who are still receiving retirements saying, this is what you got and this is why and this is how it all works. And Hillary's team are working on some really good communication materials for that. Now, so that was some of the basis for the retirement plan. Now we did budget $4.5 million, and that's the amount that is in that resolution. The majority of that is FIFO, so it's the old stuff, getting those old tri-state capital credits, the older, so we are completely back to having nothing older than 20 years. And then the rest would be a LIFO based on those 2021 margins that you have just voted to allocate. And the main reason is to help in that communication effort. I think people are going to pay a lot more attention to something where they do get a check or a bill credit. So yeah, you got allocated this, but you also got, which isn't funds that are actually coming to you yet, but you also got this as a retirement. And this will help us with that communication. It's also, we want to engage the current membership, especially new members. And that's our main thrust for the logic behind those two kind of elements to the retirement. I can also say, as we are at the 16% as of today, we're thinking these funds would actually be coming out in June. And that is not a month where we make a monthly debt payment. So we would be pushing down towards that 12%. That's all I have.
Terrific. Thank you. And just as a reminder, this has all been covered in depth in the FAQ committee.
Correct.
And it was in your packets. So I want to make sure we're not re-adjudicating everything that was covered in the FAQ. But go ahead, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, just for Graham, is it appropriate to use, I guess, abbreviations, FIFO, LIFO, in a resolution like this? I don't know how we've done it in the past, but just raising that.
We have done it that way in the past. I mean, it is, those are standard accounting terms, and this is a sort of accounting action, even though it's sort of coming through a governance route. It's I think, pretty clear in the context what that means.
Okay.
Terrific. Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, hold your hand up and say aye.
All right.
All right,
You, all opposed? All abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, let's see if we can get this committee on policy update, proposed amendment 300.
Okay, thanks, John. So we're down on page 81 of the packet. And what you'll see there is kind of the several iterations in the memo that spells out the Committee on Policy's recommendation for changes to the Series 300 policies. Just for clarification, what you see there is the original recommendation in black and red, and in green you'll see responses or questions from the full board through that question process, the live Word document, and then the responses to those questions. The only variance from that is that in the margin we do have a couple of essentially brand new comments that were made, and this guest user number 2 happens to be Kohler. Comments that were made after the last distribution of the memo. And I will suggest, although Kohler could correct me if he feels different, well, I can tell you for sure that the committee hasn't changed their response based on those comments. I feel like that Kohler got his questions answered to an acceptable level, that it wasn't going to be required to make any additional changes. So this is kind of our first heavy lift. Thank you, Kohler, for the thumbs up. This is kind of our first heavy lift since the 400 series. Since we went through and made the changes to the 400 series, which essentially eliminated the policies in the 400 series and allocated, all of that to different areas. The Committee on Policies has really attacked a bunch of one-off policy issues that needed to be addressed, involving things that were time sensitive. So the 300 series has kind of drug on for a little while, but now we're here. This is sort of one of the bigger changes that we will make. I will report that I think the process we're using is still working very well. In fact, it's getting better as we go. The people who are trying to make comments are having good ability to do that. It's really helpful for the committee to have this live document. And so I think that's going well. I think the new format that you see here, where we're showing really the whole history of the recommendation and the comments and revised recommendations, helps helps our whole group understand what the comments have been and how they are trying to be resolved. And maybe just briefly on what this whole recommendation really entails is more a restructuring of the 300 series than a policy by policy review of sort of the content. And so don't get hung up on, we're past that. And we've had this conversation, and appreciate everyone's ability to not get hung up on, real specific issues within the 300 series policies. Those will have the opportunity to be addressed again in the future. Based on this recommendation, many of them will be changed into management directives, which, as one of the questions pulls out, are available at the documentation that's available to the board upon request. Let's see. Other than that, what I think we're looking for here really is a motion to accept the changes that are proposed by the Committee on Policies, and we'll move forward from there. I would either take a motion or take questions or comments before the motion if that's needed.
I'll move that we accept the amendments to the 300 series.
Second, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, any questions or comments? Tim, go ahead.
sorry to be a pain in the butt here, but there are two things. One, the committee response on page, what is that? I think it's 86 to clarifying how non-electric rates are governed. For the time being, at the very end of that committee response, it says, for the time being, changes to non-electric rates, as well as other costs and fees, will all retain their current processes. And from my perspective, that was exactly my question. What is the current process and how does this get affected? So I don't feel like the committee really answered that. It's kind of circular there. I'm not going to stand on this for the potential approval of this, but I'm really, since I joined this board almost 4 years ago, maybe more than 4 years ago, we've talked about a revision to the line extension policy. That process has never, in my opinion, been engaged in. I'm not sure what that process is or what are these other processes. So I understand that you're trying to direct this towards electric rates, and so I won't stand in the way of this right now. But I'm asking this committee, whoever might be the chair going forward, to come back to this sooner than later and describe what those processes are and how we are to engage in them, either from a policy or a management standpoint. So I'm just pointing that out. Hope that gets recorded here by
Right.
whoever is there. One other question is, I had on 86 down further on, let's see, suspending a current policy around policy 366. I'm still not clear what suspension means. That was my question. So, okay, you want to do the policy prevents potentially a tri-state policy from taking effect, right? So what does suspending 366 do or not do in order to allow us to follow tri-state policy 119 is not answered or clear. So is there any clarification on that? What does suspension mean?
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab and then I'll ask Graham to either correct me or add color. But yeah, it's a pretty definitive statement, Tim, and therefore I understand the concern and need for clarification. Suspending the policy truly means that we do not have a policy 366 until we unsuspend it or recreate it, revise it and recreate it. And this is where I'll ask for a little help, Graham, maybe if you can. But it is currently contrary to Tri-State's policy, and so we feel we need to suspend it until we can get it better in line with that.
So by this vote, we suspend 366. Is there current implementation of 366 that also gets suspended?
I don't believe so, Tim. I think everything that's sort of operating would remain operating, right, Dan? I don't. This
Yeah, they have their
gonna,
separate PPAs and agreements associated with that.
All right, so the current community solar gardens that were established under that policy, by suspending that policy, you're saying that they continue to operate as they are without an impact.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps a better way to describe this is that, LPEA would not be currently accepting applications for new third-party owned and operated community solar gardens under 366 until we can kind of figure out how it would align with Tri-State 119, which sort of prohibits third-party ownership and requires the member system to be the owner operator.
So 366 only applies to establishment of a community solar garden, not the operation of them.
Yeah, application. I guess sort of the best way I would think of describing it is that we're just not going to accept applications under 366 at this time. for new community solar garden projects that meet the 366 standard. And also, if we have a format that complies with Tri-State 119, we could still go forward with that type of community solar garden.
Yeah, and just to give further clarification, the other point is that we are going to create like a draft subscription model to bring back to the board to look at for this. So while we wouldn't use policy, is it 366, we still need to come back to the board to get approval on the subscription model.
Right, but that would be under Tri-State policy to accommodate policy, Tri-State policy 119, right?
That's correct.
I'm just sort of, again, I don't know, I must not be communicating this well or not hearing very well, but suspension of one policy, that policy only applies to the establishment of new community solar gardens, I'm hearing, versus the operation of the existing ones. Just to confirm that, because to me, that's a yes, no, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the intent, right, Dan, is that we're just not accepting new applications is really what we're doing here, because we can't really process 366 applications in a way that complies with 119. So they kind of they can't really go anywhere anyway.
Correct.
All right.
And so, yeah, just to make it, I mean, because hopefully we need to make this clear for Tim that it does not, that this vote and the suspension of 366 does not impact any currently operating community solar gardens.
Yeah, that's maybe a better way to say it, and just to confirm that, right? All right. Thank you very much for being patient with my questions.
No, I mean, absolutely, Tim. I appreciate the questions very much, and we do have to allocate some small amount of time to these final discussions. I mean, this isn't just come in and vote on it. I appreciate absolutely the effort that you put in during the revision process. I wanted to go back to your previous concern question on the rates, and maybe just put in an ask that when the committee reviewed that question, honestly, it was very, very large. I mean, the question, the way you asked the question in the editing process was a pretty simple question that branched out into a very complex topic. And take this as you will, but I put in a request, Tim, that if you could just write down a couple of those questions and send them to me as the current chairman of the committee, and we'll figure out how those questions should be addressed, right? They currently, I don't think, are addressed in our policies, and you're right that they need to be done going forward. But rates outside of electrical rates are kind of a new thing for LPEA. I mean, obviously not the line extension policy, but that's not really a rate issue. So if you wouldn't mind, give a little clarity to that and send me a bullet point email or something so we can make sure it gets on the list.
All right, I'll try my best. Thanks much.
Great. Okay, last call. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstained? Okay. Motion carries. All right, so we are at lunch. Yes. Did I miss anything? 3. So we're on the usual thing. We'll see Matt at 12:30. Okay, well, you guys get 7 extra minutes for lunch. We'll see you at 12:30 sharp. Oh, no, wait. You guys want to start knocking out a couple reports here?
Can I?
Go ahead, Tim.
One other question. I'm not sure where this will come up in the agenda. Under the attorney report is a whole section on contractor selection policies. I don't see anything on the agenda to discuss that. I don't even see our internal, oh, there it is, attorney report. So 1:20 PM. Is that where we would just discuss that? Okay, all right. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Answered my own question.
Okay.
Appreciate
All right, you think you get this done in 7 minutes, Graham? Or you want to wait?
I'm happy to at least start down that road, right? And if there's a logical break in the middle, we could take that then. Sort of would hate to. I know we have a sort of hard stop this afternoon. I'm happy to knock out as much ahead of
Yeah,
that
let's
as
do
we
it.
can.
Let's do the best to keep the schedule tight. So you're up.
All right, so just refer everyone to my submitted report. Amongst other things, I was able to attend the CREA attorney meeting in Denver in person. It was very nice to get to meet my colleagues from around the state. And it's very interesting topics that we discussed. And then obviously, I think, I'll put my 2 cents in. I think we had a very successful annual meeting last week. So I would like to thank everyone for their support with that. And with that, I just open up to questions. Tim?
Okay, so the contractor selection policies, right? Let me dig up my notes here. This is the first time I encountered management directives associated with this policy. So it took me a while to kind of pull my way through that. I'm not sure I fully understand all that yet, right? Or have a grasp of it. Seems like those aren't publicly available. And I have some concern around Management Directive 545 and the policy that directs management towards that directive, right? So it in that, which is page, I think, 91, it says only contractors who are on a qualified list will be allowed to work on LPA facilities, such as tree trimming, I don't know, maintenance, this kind of thing, right? And further down, it says, based on LPA internal review, the contractor may then be considered for future work of the types for which they are qualified. I don't find any qualification criteria in here at this point. So I'm curious, is this just someone internally coming up with that criteria? How is that developed? Who then monitors that? So what's the methodology? Who are the participants in developing that criteria for qualification is sort of one question I have, right? It further states on the next page, the summary, I think this is your language, Graham, page 92, I believe, that let's see. It is reasonable to presume that most qualified contractors are sophisticated enough to contact LPA and solicit its business directly. And then after speaking with the VP of operations, further down, he verified this is the current process. Inquiries about contracts are routed to him, and he describes the pre-qualification process to the interested party, right? So again, I don't see a set of criteria or qualification. It seems rather ephemeral, if you will, not very hard. And again, this is the first time I've encountered this. I could be way off on this. My concern is this current process can possibly lead to missed opportunities for lower cost or higher quality contractor relationships. In other words, is this in the best interest of the members? And while we might expect only sophisticated contractors, whatever that means, to contact us, how does that build local capacity? That's fundamentally my concern here. Are we actually building local capacity? Is that even an intent, right? It seems to me that we are allocating millions of dollars every year for various projects. And how they get allocated and the criteria for that is important, as is the ability or the opportunity, I would say, for us to build local capacity to meet those, right? Those needs in a way that keeps more of our local economic development and money in our community. This is member money. We want to make sure that we're building capacity to spend that very wisely and get the best result. I'm not sure this current process does that. Maybe it does. I don't know.
Okay.
So that's my concern.
Thank you. Rachel, you have a quick one? Or sorry, I don't mean to rush you. Please go ahead.
You are rushing people, actually, I think.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
I think maybe my questions are somewhat aligned, but I'll just start broader with management directives. Similarly, didn't know about these, yeah, and I think it answers so many questions that have come up in other areas in the past. And so maybe I was just hoping for an explanation of, I believe these are on the staff land, they're produced by staff, but that's an assumption. So just wanted to clarify. Tim, to your questions about qualifications, I think management directive number 571 lists them. And then there's like some attachments later on that explain some of those pieces. But I was just hoping for a broader explanation.
A broader explanation about management directives and how they
Where
operate in
does it
corporate
live?
governance.
Yeah, so is it like we make a policy, then that cues Jessica and the staff to make directives. The directives live in staff, thus we don't meddle with them. Just trying to kind of get my hands wrapped around that.
I think that's a great summary of it, right? So if you look at policies 102, 103, 104, they cover the delegation of certain corporate authorities from the board to the staff. There's sort of some are delegations, some are reporting authorities, stuff like that. So most of those have an administrative management directive that tries to correspond to how management implements the policy or delegation set forth by the board.
And so just one follow-up I had, because to Tim's point, I know there's been this kind of popcorns up all the time about, how do we infuse or put forward a priority or some consideration of that whole local procurement side of things in the bidding process. Obviously, there's a ton of other criteria involved. So is that we need to come up with a policy, or we set as a strategic priority? I'm hearing loud and clear, these are not our turf or territory to play in, but that we're in the policy world. And so just trying to figure out the mechanism to address the whole, I think what Tim's alluding to.
No, I mean, that is part of the policy. Let me pull policy up. Sorry.
Well, I guess part of it, the reason I ask is because I think I saw it in the policy, but then when I look at the qualifications or what have you, it's not in there. So I just didn't, and you mentioned these hadn't been updated in 2008. Yeah, we're just learning about these wonderful directives. I think this just brings up questions as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, I think this sort of comes back to Tim's point, right? Which is there is a management directive 571 that does have specific pre-qualifications. And my understanding, I provided the blank copies of these to everyone. I have signed copies, and yes, Rachel's right. The most recent ones were sort of signed in 2008. Most of them were signed in 2002. So they haven't been revisited by us in quite a while. But so Management Directive 571 does have specific pre-qualification information about electric system construction contracts, but I believe the Management 545 is for contracts generally, right? It says, retirement work, tree trimming, excavation, other needs like that. And so I don't know if there would be a one size fits all application for that, but speaking with Jerry, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have new vendor paperwork, and there is some additional sort of paperwork information that you walk through people that are going through our qualification process that aligns with the type of contract they want to become pre-qualified for. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I'm going to step in here on a process and put a pin in this conversation because now we're eating into our own lunch. To be continued after we get to the other side of the legal presentation. Okay, so we will see you guys. I'm not cutting this conversation off at all. To be resumed. And we will see you guys now in 25 minutes, please. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Let me try that again. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Matt's here. Make sure you guys all check your, while Matt's talking, look up your executive session link so that you can have it. And then if you're still eating lunch, some of us, go ahead and feel free to turn your screen off. We know you're here. All right, Matt, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, John. Quick update today. We're going to file our initial comments on the BDP settlement this afternoon. They're actually going in as we speak. Pretty short. They explain why LPEA supports the partial buy down settlement. We'll see how many other entities file today, so we'll know that by about 3:30 or so Mountain Time. So supporters will be filing. To the extent that there's any opposing or agnostic or other comments, those can come in as well, and that'll trigger kind of what happens next in the case. So settlements on file, settlements moving forward, all of which is great. If there are no what we frame as adverse comments filed today, then there would be no next response round. If there are some kind of adverse comments, then there's an opportunity to respond in 12 days on May the 30th. So we'll be monitoring that. That's really the biggest, that's really probably the biggest update at FERC. Adams County case is starting to kind of move forward a little bit, and we'll need to have some discussions about that as we move forward, but we'll do those in the executive session. And the CTP case is currently going through trial at Tri-State, at FERC, and that's going on right now. So those are really the two biggest kind of updates from the legal side. Happy to take any questions, or we can jump into executive session if not.
Tim, go ahead.
So just to clarify, did you say BDP or CTP?
So in the BDP, the comments are going in today. So the way that it works is there's a settlement agreement, there's an opportunity to comment, then there's an opportunity to respond to any comments that are received. The way that we've set up the proposed process and the judge has signed off on is that if there are no adverse comments, then there won't be another round, and then it'll be certified up and go forward. So we'll just have to see kind of what happens this afternoon.
Could you clarify if was there any opposition filed at any point to the settlement?
There were entities that did not support the settlement. United Power was one of those entities, as well as Basin. Basin, I think, has a concern mostly on the eastern side of the system in terms of whether entities over there would be pursuing partial buy downs. But we'll see if they actually file anything today. The only statements we received, we're required to confer before we file. And the only statement we received as part of the conferral was that they did not support.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else for public before we flip over? Okay. And also just a quick comment to reinforce, I say it regularly, but it's worth saying again, if you are feeling rushed at any point or moved along, definitely hold your hand up or send me a send me a text. My intention is not to rush people. My intention is to just hold pace. And that's for everybody. And that was, so I apologize if anybody felt rushed. But with that said, can I rush for a motion to get into executive session?
I move we head to executive session.
There we go. Rachel, Ted second, all in favor. Let's say aye. All opposed.
Aye.
Yep. Any
Kohler has
abstained?
his hand up, though.
Yeah, I think, did you have something specific on the motion or just a quick, what should you do?
Yes, what should I do?
Okay.
Kohler, you can join for, I think we're going to talk mostly about the BDP. There's some Adams County material, but I think that's something that Jessica and Graham and Dan and Carl and I need to circle up on a little bit before we kind of bring it back to this board. So I think you can join for purposes of today, because I think we're going to primarily talk about the BDP.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right on. Okay, we will just, everybody have their link, since clearly this is Technology Jinx Day. Everybody got their link? Okay, we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're gonna, if this is what everybody wants to do, I think we're gonna double back on the conversation. I'm sorry. Okay, so there were no board actions resulting from executive session, and we had started the process of attorney reports, section 10A, and Graham had concluded his remarks, and we had started a discussion around the board's role in crafting, managing, guiding, purchasing, and vendors, and all things in that world. And I had my hand up. Sue had her hand up. I believe somebody else had their hand up.
I'm gonna say Dan.
Okay, well, I'm sure once we get going, they'll remember their question. So Sue, why don't you take it and then I'll go after you.
All righty, thank you. I think that this is probably a really good opportunity for both staff and the board to review and maybe make some changes to our RFP process. I was under the assumption, which is always really dangerous, when the member asked me about the RFP, that like most big companies, that LPEA posted it in the paper and on our website. So I was really surprised to find out that that wasn't the case. I do think, in looking at the summary here, that it's pretty presumptuous of us as board and staff think that our members who are interested in working or contracting for LPEA Electric, that they should contact us versus them being able to go to our website or to the newspaper and see what's out there. I certainly understand, like with our purchase power contract, the RFP there was confidential, and that made a lot of sense. But for most of our RFPs, I don't think that's probably the case. I do think that we work for our members. And so even though it might be a little more time consuming for staff to review those applications coming in, that people, the contractors, I think that's our job and that's what we should be doing. To Tim's point, I really like us keeping as much possible local so that we are supporting our members as well, back to them.
Okay, thank you. Graham, did you start to say something there? No?
I hadn't, but I can address some things, or I can sort of hold my comments until later.
Why don't you hold your comments to the end? Let's get all the directors' comments out on the table. Okay, I'll go. I definitely have an opinion on this. Excuse me. I think, so just to sort of put my cards on the table, I think we're wading out into very dangerous territory here. It is, we have one employee, that's Jessica, and then everybody reports to Jessica. It is a moral hazard for us to simultaneously have any channel, even a gratuitous referral participation of a potential vendor where the CEO or her staff need to make a decision if any part of that calculus contemplates our satisfaction. So even a very healthy casual referral, hey, Christmas time's coming up. I don't know if last year you guys should, we should go buy chocolates for gifts from Animus Chocolates. Totally a harmless referral. That can be construed in a lot of different ways. What happens if we don't want to buy? What happens if there's a reason for buying chocolates from somewhere else? What happens if Animus Chocolates doesn't have the capacity or the price isn't satisfactory? Are we going to get in there and adjudicate that? Are we going to double guess that? And what happens if Jerry needs equipment and he wants to go local, but they just don't have availability and he needs to go and get this equipment now? Does he need our approval? Does he need a guideline? This is just a recipe for trouble. I think that there is a couple of small things that we can do here. Perhaps a vendor inquiry at LPEA.coop type email, so that at least you have a basic onboarding. But if you're referring people in, this is going to end badly. And I would really encourage us to just stay completely out of all forms of vendor selection, referrals, encouragement, any policies of that matter. And then the second piece of that is how visible do we go with our RFPs? Again, I think you're just wading out into trouble. So are we going to RFP $200 purchase of coffee? Because we can provide a local vendor. 81301 can do that, or we can just buy some Folgers next time someone goes to the store. That, do we set a floor on that and say, hey, below $10,000, what about below $50,000? What about the initial build? Is this a 2-year contract? Do we weigh in on anything below 18 months? What about renewals? What about renegotiations? You just can't have a board participating in any of those processes. There's just no way to do it without creating moral hazard for the CEO and her staff. And so that is my opinion on this matter. And I think we should just get away from this whole issue as fast as possible. With that said, I'll put my hand down and go back to managing the board. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with just letting contractors know that LPEA, accepts applications. On page 100 of our packet lays it all out pretty clearly. And I would guess a lot of contractors have no interest in that. I don't think we're under any obligation to hold anybody's hand on this. When I was doing contract work, I went out and found who might hire me. And I think the contractors, I think they need to take that kind of responsibility. Maybe a contractors meeting once or twice a year just to say, here's what we do, here's what we require. And then, it's in their hands. Again, it's not up to us to hold anybody's hand on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I don't think I would disagree with you that the board should not be involved in selecting the vendors, right? However, the board, I think, has a responsibility around its policy role to define some guidelines, some guardrails for for ensuring that our other strategic goals are met, things like local economic development, and that there are that it is a fair and process that results in the best value to the members for a whole host of things that LPEA purchases for its operation, including, capital work and maintenance and tree trimming and so forth. And yeah, there are size considerations in that. So in that process, we could be in a position of helping to develop a solid base that provides greater benefit to the members in terms of competitiveness and quality of work product. So that my raising this kind of issue, which I've done before, specifically when a member came to me and asked about what's the process for tree trimming, right? And not to represent that particular vendor or anything, they brought up some questions which I think are good, that I think are policy level around how do we ensure the best result for the members through policy. And also, there is risk to the co-op of a directive or a process that is not well handled. The city of Durango, their chief financial officer embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars through a procurement methodology that ran afoul, right? So not that I'm suggesting there's anything like that going on at LPEA, but we have to be careful that authority doesn't rest too largely in one person's or one position's hand that doesn't have clear criteria around it. And I think that ensuring that is part of our fiduciary responsibility as well. So maybe this is uncomfortable, but I think it's necessary to have this discussion. And I don't think it's out of bounds of the board to ask these questions and desire a better process. That's all. So thank you. I'm happy to work on this offline. We don't have to solve it today here. But I would like to see some level of potential review and a timeline around that.
Great. Thank you for that comment. Just as a quick note, and then I'll call on the next couple of people here. So and Graham, correct me if I have this wrong, but board policy 103 has covers some, maybe a lot of what Tim is identifying as issues, and includes many of the processes and emphasizes some of the issues that he's talking about. I think, and I think these conversations may belong down at the PAC first and foremost. But I think if we're gonna put in here on this, we should all, people who care about this issue should start with board policy 103. Do I have that right, Graham?
Yes, specifically board policy Roman numeral 2, capital C, number 4, lowercase g, which says purchases shall obtain, quote, best overall value to the cooperative, considering price, reliability of product or service, customer service availability, energy efficiencies, and vendor reputation. Whenever possible and practical, preference should be given to companies located within the cooperative service territory or companies with a cooperative relationship. Unless a cost difference exists, the item is not available or the product cannot be obtained in a timely manner. So it's my understanding that is absolutely accounted for in every pre-qualification and bid process that we go out when we negotiate these. Also, if you don't mind me just saying real quickly, since you called on me, I have done a decent amount of research on this, both because it came up at the annual meeting and the directors have been curious about it. And it is, pre-qualification is absolutely the industry standard on these, particularly when they're bidded contracts, because it becomes very difficult to sort of deny a bid halfway down the road if you find out that somebody has somebody unqualified has put in a low ball bid. And so particularly in public and quasi-public contracts of this nature, pre-qualification helps us sort of take care of that. I mean, I absolutely understand the conversations need to be had on how do we market people coming into the qualification process and cultivate that and whatever, but I absolutely think that we have to retain the pre-qualification process.
Well, and Jerry just reminded me that there's only certain contractors qualified to work around electrical systems. So we actually have to be very conscious of that. And that's, you know, our number one thing is safety. So we have to be careful with that. But I do really appreciate re-looking at the process, as Tim mentioned, just to refresh it. I think that's a good idea. And then I thought Joe brought up another great idea, maybe just hosting. We already do host vendors actually at the company. We make that open to everybody. We solicit it. Dan has done a number of solicitations for solar vendors to come in, and he makes that open to the public. And then we also have done that for electric heat pumps and just general contractors to update them on what we're doing. So we actually do a lot of outreach, but I appreciate what Joe's saying. Maybe once a year we have an all vendor come together where we actually walk through the pre-application process and educate vendors on how they can get work with us.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for that context, Graham and Jessica. Kirsten, couple.
Yeah. So we as directors know that when we set policy, we just expect that staff will, that Jessica will carry it out, and there's policies and procedures they use. I'd never heard them called management directives, but that was something I learned this month. But we know that there's their policy and process manual. So there's no surprise in that. And we very rarely even look at that or are concerned with that because we know it's being carried out. Every once in a while, something comes up and you see, oh, well, maybe that's not exact. They're not interpreting it the same way the board intended to interpret. And that's the only time we should ever ask Jessica to relook. And as she has said, she's going to relook at that with in mind of what we've been saying here. Regarding Graham's note itself, in it, he says it likely never occurred to anyone to add an area to the website with information for contractors who are interested for pre-qualification. And so to state the obvious, let's add an area on the website for contractors who are interested in the more pre-qualified vendors should be better. But I get the need for the pre-qualification. So getting the word out about that process is important. And it's important to not tie it to a specific RFP because that will unduly slow that RFP. So that's where I'm headed with this. And I hope we can get there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kirsten. Sue, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'll make mine quick, but I do appreciate all the comments that have been made here. And I'm glad that we're rethinking this process. I don't think any of the board has in mind to refer people or contractors to staff. I think our concern, or at least my concern, is that we always want to be transparent to our membership. And I think that the process that has been used historically may not do that. So I'm encouraged to hear that Jessica's thinking, she and Dan are thinking of other ways to do some outreach. Certainly putting it on the website would be helpful. So, and I'm with Tim, if you guys would like director input on any of these, how it could be improved, I would be happy to do that as well. But I think it's an opportunity to really look at this, especially if it hasn't been looked at since, 10 or 12 years ago. So thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. So absent any more questions, let's give the mic back to Graham, and just to if you have any concluding remarks on your attorney report, as attorneys are normally charged with vendor selection and RFP management. Do you have anything else in your report?
I don't have anything additional to add. I hope that what I've been able to comment on has been responsive to the questions that people had along the way. I know this has been an area that a lot of directors have had a lot of interest in, and I've tried to sort of delve into the corporate archives best I can to find out not just where we are, but how we got here.
Terrific. Well, thank you for that. Look, we're a diverse board. We represent a diverse group within the community. We don't all have to agree on the best approach, but I have no doubt that our hearts are in the right place, and we're trying to just make the best decision for our membership. So I appreciate that. Okay, let's push on to director reports. So highlights and questions. Everybody had a chance to read all the director reports. So let's start with Roundup.
All right. Hello, one and all. For the Roundup report, we included kind of the breakdown of grant requests to grants offered, as someone had requested in the last month. Also, I know it can be kind of confusing. Why are the notes from 2 months back? I explained that a little bit at the bottom of the report. It's just kind of the way that the meeting schedules and flow work out. But other than business as usual, I think the biggest thing to just mention is that Roundup is looking at a few of its own internal processes and doing some review as well. So one of the things they're currently looking at is the frequency of meetings and grant making. And so we'll see what happens when we get back in our next meeting. And then I think the only other thing that's kind of bubbling up there is that the Roundup board has just realized some of the hiccups that happen when you have rolling board membership and not necessarily a super robust onboarding or training plan in place. And so they're making some efforts to build out a pretty strong orientation so that less time is spent in the meetings, kind of stumbling over some of the rules and the procedures, and more time can be spent doing the work. So that's all I've got. Any questions, comments, or I guess additions from Ted?
Any questions or comments for the Roundup crew? All right, onward to Tri-State. Kohler, you're up. I'm sorry, hang on a second, Kohler. Hang on a second, Kohler. Dan, did you have a comment before that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why one of the requests got double what they wanted. And in the past, there's been people who could use more, but they didn't get it. So I'm just wondering why that one came up so large. I think they requested 2,500 and they got 5,000.
Anyone?
Page 111.
That might have been a typo. Let me get back to you on that via email. Yeah.
3,000 and 5,000.
I think that was a typo.
Yeah, almost certain,
Yeah.
certain, right there.
I don't think we bumped anyone.
They got the exact number that they requested. It wasn't bumped. So that's just a typo here.
Okay. Well, it just looked pretty bad to me.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get that. We'll double check that and get an email out to confirm that is just a typo. Okay.
And it will end up being reflected in the minutes from next meeting. That'll be in our next board packet. So there will be documentation of that.
Okay. All right. To you, Kohler.
Okay, thank you. The report is in the packet. I have a couple highlights I'd like to mention that some of them are kind of in there and I'd like to go into them a little further and some are not. Starting this month, our regular board meeting was changed to 8 o'clock instead of 8:30. They're trying to get it so some of us can catch our flights a little bit easier getting home, and also others can drive in the daylight. The financial position this year for Tri-State is going in a negative direction as far as budget goes. The biggest reason is increased expenses, and the two biggest expense increases is fuel and purchase power. Pretty stunning what's coming up, and some of these price changes, it's pretty hard to swallow. Another thing is that we had one of our members and they lost their largest load, and it's a permanent loss, and it's a big load for them, and it's a big load for Tri-State as well. Also, they had the NRECA legislative session here just a few weeks ago, and the biggest subject and the biggest talking was as far as the Commerce Department. And the Commerce Department is doing an investigation on the Chinese solar tariffs. And this can actually end up, if it goes as they originally planned this investigation to go, to stall purchases of big solar up to 2 years. And it's affected Tri-State so far. A couple of their projects now have been put off for 1 year. But there is a lot of pressure. And I also saw somewhere where John Witcher was with a group also talking to our local senators for the same thing. And my gut feeling is they'll be putting a lot of pressure on these people to get this corrected. So I don't know what the effect would be on crossover. I'm sure it's going to have an effect on them because you just can't get the big volume solar panels. Then also, you might have seen where Tri-State donated $10,000 worth of materials and time for the fires in New Mexico. The biggest value of this was actually the timing, because when they came in and did that, the local community was unprepared and really wasn't being able to even serve food to the firefighters. So this was really, really valuable. The one fire down there that's called the Calf Canyon in Hermit's Peak is now the largest fire in New Mexico's history. It went up over 300,000 acres, and I think it's only about 25% contained. It is affecting Tri-State as far as some of their transmission, but the biggest effect, unfortunately, is on its members. And they're getting hit pretty hard with the different fires, not just that one, but a couple of the other ones. Also, just for your information, CORE, which used to be IREA or Intermountain Rural Electric Association, which is the largest Colorado electric co-op, they dropped out of CREA. No details are given, but that kind of raised some eyebrows of what's going on there. Then the water levels at Lake Powell, they have a very high potential of losing 1,300 megawatts of generating capacity this summer with the way those levels are. And then Kirsten sent out some questions and some thoughts a couple days ago, and one of hers was on the capacity factor of the renewables for Tri-State, that they were high, and she asked if that was because of wind. And yes, it is because of wind. Wind actually hit 2 different milestones in the last couple of months. On one day in March, it was 42.1% of the contribution to the load at that time. And it also hit a peak in April of 655 megawatts. And Kirsten, for probably the best information for others that are interested in this, if you look on our drive under the operations report on page 8, it shows all 6 of the wind facilities, and it gives you their capacity factor, and they are in the 40s and 50s. Only 2 of them are in the 40s, the other 4 are in the 50s. And it also does that with solar. And the solar is 2 of them are in the 20s and 1 is in the 30s. So I think that'll help maybe clarify the question you asked. So that's my highlights, and then I'm open for questions. John, looks like you got your hand up.
I do. I just wanted to add a minor point of clarification. I was at a meeting with our 2 federal senators this past weekend where we discussed the subjects, but I was acting in the capacity of outside of LPEA. So I was not there as an LPEA representative. Happy to fill you in on that conversation offline. But it wasn't pretty much as Kohler described it, with a little more higher levels of frustration. But thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
And I'm sorry if I didn't give clarity to that, John. I apologize for that.
No, it's totally fine.
My main point is that a lot of different people are really putting pressure on these legislators that it can't last 2 years. We can't go without these supplies for 2 years. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, when is the next Tri-State meeting, Cole?
It will be, I think it's June the 5th. Let me look here real quick. It's a little bit different than normal.
6th, I think.
It is, yeah, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. So the 6th would be executive session, 7th is committee meetings, and the 8th is the board meeting. And again, all of you can attend if you want to. You just got to get permission from Tri-State, and you can attend it virtually if you'd like, or you can show up. Anything else? Okay, that's all I have, John.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, on to the next item, fast track. Rachel, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, I looked over our meeting minutes from last month at Roundup have been published, and indeed, we only granted the Durango Cowboy Gathering the 3,000 they asked for. That is a typo. I'll send it up to court. Thank you.
Great. Okay, fast track. Who's driving?
I guess that's me, Tim. So, you know, most of it is in the report there. The probably one of the bigger things is the Lumen, which was previously CenturyLink. It's now got a new name. Probably to keep people from hating them too much. But they, I mentioned before that they increased wholesale rates, and Kelly was able to provide a table to us of how much that raised the rates and what the cost to in lost revenue would be for fast track, which I listed in the report. It was pretty significant in terms of monthly revenue. Fast track did do a lot to help a number of these customers find different avenues for obtaining the same services they were getting off these previous lines. And but that did, in doing so, that also lowered revenue in many cases to fast track. So it's a case of helping the customer, ended up lowering their costs, lowering our revenue, and then, which I think is admirable, you know, to pass that on as well to those customers. And at the same time, there are a substantial number of other customers. There's no alternative, and they're kind of out in a limb. I guess they can go directly to CenturyLink or Lumen and try and contract for a much higher cost of service. But it's a little bit of a, it makes you wonder why the regulators let this happen. But there was also a network outage on a server that was actually a problem at Fast Track that took a while for a number of customers to get back up. Very unfortunate. Some lessons were learned and will be applied to that. Hopefully it won't happen again. And I don't know, anyone have any questions or concerns? All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Tim. CREA.
All right, great, thank you. Well, Kohler stole a little bit of thunder. I wasn't going to lead off with it, but Core did submit their 2-month, I believe it's 2-month notice to withdraw from CREA. Basically, all I have heard on that particular topic is CREA and NRCA, they're pulling out from both organizations, are not providing the training and direction that they feel that they would like to go in. That's all I know on that one. Safety, this is a big one to me because I really like Del Kishbaugh, and unfortunately he is leaving to join another organization. He's the safety coordinator for CREA. And you know that, you know, if I have a sneaking suspicion and that's all it would be, it's probably a talent poaching situation, because he was doing some fabulous work getting, you know, up to speed on being trained and a lot of working with FEMA and developing relationships and all kinds of good stuff. So I won't know much more about that until the meeting, which is not next week, but actually it is next week. It's next Thursday and Friday. In the communications branch, postage is going up. It's not going to affect us because it's mostly for CCL, Country Life Magazine. Postage is going up, paper's going up. July. Not a whole lot to report on the education front. I did discover a really fabulous piece on the cooperative.com website that lists everything that they have coming up educational wise. A lot of it you have to pay for. The only way you don't have to pay for NRECA classes is through CREA itself. So when those schedules come available, I'll forward them to you. Kirsten asked a couple of questions. The legislative session is over. It is closed as of May 11th. And she asked specifically about the rec amendment for HB 221362, which was reducing building greenhouse gas emissions. And so the concern was brought forth by Holy Cross, and the original draft precluded utilities from being able to claim any of those renewable energy credits. And so the amendment allows utilities to be able to claim renewable energy credits to meet portfolio standards on certain projects like net metered projects. The Excel question, Kirsten, I don't know how I've gotten Excel and PSCO combined. My notes say Excel, but I did query Craig Johnson. I don't know if you saw that response about the resource adequacy bill that they were working on. That did not ultimately get introduced in the legislature, so it was not part of this season. And Dan did answer your question a little bit more about what specifically he thinks Excel is looking for. I'm sorry, I didn't really get to look at that and think about that too much yet.
Yeah, hey, Holly, PSCO is Excel. They're the same.
Are they one and the same?
Yeah.
I didn't think they were. Okay.
Excel is bigger there because there's parts
It's
of
like
Excel
the
that are not
Mongo
PSCO,
Corporation.
but
Gotcha.
all of PSCO is Excel. Yeah.
Okay, that's why they're interchangeable in my notes then. I think that is the bulk of what I wanted to share right now. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, on that resource allocation, Dan, I did see your response. And I think you, Holly, is this the one you said that CREA might talk about it next month, just as something that they think their members should do, or is that another issue?
I think that they were looking more at the August meeting. You know, what happened at the last in-person meeting when we had a managers, joint managers and CREA board meeting was they had a panel specifically of transmission experts, and Brian Hannigan moderated that panel, and it ended up being really, really highly valuable. It's like a whole topic. It was about wholesale markets and RTOs, and that's one area that I think that I really need to expand my understanding of. It turned out to be incredibly valuable. So they were kind of kicking around this resource adequacy planning as being something presented in August.
Yeah, so Dan, you were talking about resource adequacy as kind of the official reports that have to go up. I think what seems to me what CREA is interested in is all of us having a better understanding of our resources and where they come from and the possible impacts on it. Have I got that right, Holly?
Well, so I'll give a little more context on the resource adequacy. Actually, it was a big, we have manager meetings once a month, if not more during session. And actually, this was a big point of contention because it's not as simple, I think, as what we all know. We all believe in resource adequacy. It's important. You actually have to have it in a power contract. It's not an option. What Excel wanted to do is they wanted to make groups like Guzman require resource adequacy plans. So this is how the bill got started. It's an Excel bill. CREA, I don't know if at the end of it, they became neutral or tried to kill the bill, Holly. And that's because it was more of an issue around Excel requiring even small utilities that don't have any power supply to do resource adequacy plans when they rely on Tri-State. And why Excel was doing it, it was actually to what they told us at this conference we went to last fall is they wanted to spread the risk around because Excel has to pay for this resource adequacy. They're saying, well, why aren't the Guzmans or the crossovers required by law to also do it? Well, they are. That's the point. So it's actually more detailed. It's not so much about resource adequacy as it is rate basing costs. So just to let folks know, when they do a lot of legislation in the Capitol, there's other reasons behind it that aren't necessarily as good as what you hear, because who can vote against resource adequacy? Another side to the story on this one. So that's why a lot of the co-ops were opposed to it. Not because resource adequacy, because we all do it, it was the context. So I'm not sure if that's what they're going to talk about, Holly, but in regards to resource adequacy for the state, yeah, we all the utilities discuss this, but most utilities, the co-ops that are members of Tri-State, we don't have anything to say about it. It's not our job. It's Tri-State's job. For us, it's going to be Tri-State and crossover, and we are requiring the crossover contracts, which they would have to do anyway, put in resource adequacy provisions. For those that don't know what that means, it just means they're obligated to serve energy at all times so that no one's out of energy at any time.
Jessica, you just said that if it was the crossovers and the Guzmans of the world were also required by law. Which law is that?
Well, so they are, let me step that back. They are required to have resource adequacy in their power arrangement contracts. But what the Excel piece of legislation require them to do is, I believe, file those with the regulator, and they're not regulated by the Colorado PUC. So that's why there was a lot of those groups opposing it, because they said we already have to do resource adequacy and our purchase power agreements. We don't want to now go around and be subject to the PUC regulations on resource adequacy plans. And that's where you saw a lot of the co-ops come out and say, yeah, we don't want the PUC to start regulating us, because that is now scope creep.
So there is something to be said of having somebody besides the customer, us being the customer, being regulating the resource adequacy of our sellers. So
but that's Tri-State. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Tri-State, and that's regulated, but Guzman and crossover are not. So I understand the concern about creep and it affecting co-ops, but I think that these big buyers and sellers of electricity do need to have some sort of regulation beyond what we as a customer are able to do, because then we become the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, and I think to Holly's point, we'll discuss that at CREA in the fall.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, Holly, couple questions. This core co-op, what part of the state do they represent? What counties, do you know?
I want to say middle, central, higher, north. I'm not 100% sure on that, to tell you the truth, Joe.
I think it's Douglas County in the south suburbs of Denver.
Well, it's like Morrison. They used to be my co-op. So it's Morrison,
urbanish.
Littleton, parts of Lakewood. It used to be IREA.
And they're bigger than United?
Yes.
Wow.
Are they?
I thought United was.
They're
big.
about, I think they're around 100,000 meters.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other burning questions? Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you very much. Okay, Western United.
Let me first get unmuted and then go to my report, if I may. Okay, so a couple things going on at Western United. We did vote to retire 25% of our outstanding patronage immediately, and then do the other 75% later in the year. So that's good. Interesting thing at Western United, we have a policy that says if CPI is more than 5%, which normally drives salary increases, then the board had to approve it. So the CPI, it was at 8.5%. So we did have to approve going up to an 8.5% increase in salaries this year. We also voted on the CEO's pay and merit, not increase, but merit review. Thank you. So the sales are up 27.6%. I pulled out the LPEA sales so that you can see that it's not an inconsiderable portion of our operating expenses. Certainly much less than power supply, but it does take a lot of equipment to run the company. The backlog is the biggest news, well, the second biggest news. The current order backlog is 95 million. That's included in several things. There's the product in stock and on orders, and they're passed because of the customer requested date. There's product in stock and on orders, and the customer has requested it for the future. So we're holding on to them for them. And then there's product in stock not on the current orders. There's just the stuff that we're keeping. There's a lot of that's going on because, as you know, we're buying as many transformers and conductors as we can because the backlog on that, getting them from our suppliers is so high. Along the lines of transformers, ERMCO, who is our biggest supplier of transformers, even though we've been looking for the last couple of years to try to diversify the sources, is getting out of the co-op business. So they are changing. They're saying we're not going to be a co-op anymore. I don't understand legally how they do all this, but they did it. And we've got about $6 million in patronage, actually almost $7 million in patronage sitting out there with them. We're not 100% sure when and how we will get that back. We get about $1 million a year cash from them. So we're certainly looking at that. There's been negotiations with ERMCO saying, okay, well, great. Now that you're not a co-op, what can we do? Can we to get better pricing than you might do for your Tom, Dick, and Harry folks out there? And they have not been very receptive as far as negotiating mutually favorable terms. So that's a big deal. Getting our transformers in is a big deal. The cost of those transformers is a big deal. And this is where LPEA is going to feel it too with any of our work that we're getting from them, any of our product. And then I just want to do a quick little education because I think it's fascinating. So Western United, and when Holly was on the board, she educated us on this too, but I think it's worthwhile redoing. So regular full-time employees receive 20% of the after-tax margins before the rest goes out to members. So of the after-tax margins, 20% gets divided among all the employees. 80% of that is based upon the salary of that employee, and 20% is based upon merit. So some folks can pretty much, especially in recent years, double their salary. And they get it as a lump sum at the end of the year. It's highly incentivizing, and it works really well for Western United. And I'm just pointing it out because it's an interesting business model. Any questions? That's it for me, John. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, we are close enough to back on track, and that concludes the end of our agenda. Joe, did you have a final thought here?
Yeah, just wondering on that Pagosa fire, Jessica, is that, how is that may or may not affect us? Any ideas yet?
Yeah, great question. Garrett actually had to leave to go to the Forest Service fire meeting, but he's back on. And so I think he's back on. Maybe he can give us an update.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I'm hiding. So I did meet with them today. This is all I know so far. So it started yesterday afternoon around 1. It is 7 miles north of town, up County Road 400. It's right on the Mineral and Archuleta County line. As of 2 hours ago, it had burned 613 acres. The fire is approaching a small neighborhood called Lost Valley of the San Juans. That neighborhood has been evacuated. So we de-energized the line that feeds that neighborhood. There are 40 meters out of power. No homes have been burnt. Our power line has not been burnt. There's red flag warnings today, wind advisory tomorrow and Friday. Let's see. The cause of the fire is still unknown. They're investigating that. They're predicting the fire to move north and northeast today. It could potentially glance the southern part of the Lost Valley subdivision, but we're kind of just at the mercy of the wind to see what happens today. We have another meeting this evening to see what where we can go from here. And there's zero containment that I know of. So just keep our fingers crossed and see what happens.
Okay.
And if you could, just shoot us a note if anything weird is happening with our stuff, if you wouldn't mind, if you have the time. Thanks.
Sorry, could you say that again? I'm sorry, Joe.
Oh, just if any LPEA infrastructure is going to be affected, it would just be nice if we could get a heads up on that.
For sure. Yeah, you might remember last year, Lost Valley of the San Juans, we replaced about 1.5 miles of underground cable. It was one of our capital work projects. And that fire's headed towards that underground section. It's getting close. My hope is that it kind of goes through that section, but who knows? We'll definitely keep you in the loop.
Thank you for that. Kohler, you got a last thoughts here?
Yeah, just a thought on a different subject. I'd like to thank the staff for the work they did on the annual meeting. I thought it was well done. I do have one suggestion going forward. I do think it would be important to introduce all the people on the stage and also the visiting dignitaries, because I had people ask me who they were and you couldn't quite see the name tags if you were very far back. But thank you. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good and had good comments from members. So thanks.
You're here. Kirsten.
Yeah, I wanted to put a plug in for the rate design committee report, which is attached after everybody else's report there. It wasn't on the first agenda. It ended up on the director point agenda, so I didn't think about asking to add it. I am asking that we add it all the time in the future for the next 9 months when we're in this. And I would like to make just a couple quick highlights on that. Take a look at this. You'll see how important load factor is, and we have a really good load factor most of the time. So that's very helpful to us, and you will see where it affects La Plata. You see each one of the co-ops on several different charts and how different things affect them, including the different ways that the FERC rate comparisons and such. So it's worthwhile y'all taking a look at it to see as we work through this. Okay, well, I see where La Plata is on this. And of course, the rate design committee is not just defining it for La Plata, but we need to figure out where the best place is. We do have a work plan to kind of go through all of the different things, whether it's tilt, whether it's some of the reserved, some of the reserved FERC things, and we're going through that in the next 9 months. And I believe that's all I needed to highlight. Any questions about the rate design committee? Okay, I do want to highlight one more thing. On page 162 begins the memo that Dan put together on how we think the using the A40 as a starting point should look like. That was voted in the affirmative last month. So this month we're going to be talking about tilt, but take a look at Dan's. I think it's a really good summary of some of the things that we need to consider. If you don't read anything else, read 162 and 163. Thank you.
Great. Rachel?
Just what is TILF?
Tilt, yeah. So tilt is trying to recover fixed costs under energy rate. Did I have that right, Dan?
I would say it's the ability to how much of the fixed costs you want to cover under the energy rate.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay. I think that wraps things up. So without any further questions or comments.
John, sorry. Do we need to talk about one more item?
Okay. It's your
Or do we
schedule.
not? What'd you say?
Yeah, it's your schedule.
Well, we have to go to executive session. So we forgot one item that that I need to bring up to folks, but it has to be an executive session. Is that okay? Or do you want me to wait till next month?
No, I don't think we can do it in email, but it can everybody go 10 minutes longer? Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, the agenda says adjourn at 2:30 PM. We're at 2:10.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on a different time zone. And I'm tired.
So
You're
I'm just trying to-
100% right. Then we should do it. We should do it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
100%.
Jessica, who from staff do you
And I
want there?
apologize. I was too caught up in the other discussion and I forgot to mention one more item. So if we can go back to executive session, that would be helpful.
Jessica, do
We
you
need
need
a
staff there?
general topic.
Graham?
No, it's legal. No, it's legal. I mean,
Okay,
Yeah.
I
so
think,
I move that we go
for us to go into executive session.
there you go. I'll take it from John. Second.
Second.
There we go. Ted. All right.
And for staff, it's just Dan and Graham at this point.
Okay. And
Thank
this is just an FYI, and Kohler, you can join on this.
Yep.
All in favor to go to executive session?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Great. All abstained. All right. Get on back to executive session. And we'll see you in a sec.
Okay.
Just returning to the general conference, the general meeting to officially say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys, and thanks for the participation.
Thank you.